right. Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Crack Down. Thorn was on one already, man. Jesus Christ.
It's all right.
What did you have another commentary about one of the lyrics in the song?
Wasn't anything sick, no. Wasn't related to the music.
All right, well, episode 32 of the Crackdown. Here we are, getting towards the end of season 1, but we got to get these in. And obviously today we have Caedrel on. Caedrel's been on the desk a lot for LEC. He's been on the live viewing. This guy watches a ton of League, has a lot of intelligent opinions, so I thought it would only be right to bring him on the show. So how are you doing today, Caedrel?
Lovely, mate. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm chilling. What about yourself, Thorin? You good?
All right. Plus, you have to realize the other thing about Caedrel is, one, he's obviously had loads of desk work because he wasn't that good in LEC player.
Whoa, come on.
English, so obviously.
Here he goes.
And then three, because he's been on bad teams, he has to be good at explaining himself.
30 seconds in and I'm already roasted. It's 30 seconds.
Man, I thought you were gonna let him go easy. I mean, he's one of your people from the UK as well. There's no brotherhood here. You still gonna roast him just like everyone else?
Thorin has no filter for anyone.
Listen, I once asked Caedrel about it. He even informed me, so maybe he can tell people here. Because one thing that no one picks up on, this is how you know most LEC viewers are just generally European. They're not all from the UK. No one ever points out that he does not have a British accent. Like when this guy talks, you can tell by the way, because obviously in European League of Legends, you play in all these multinational teams. He has like a borderline Swedish accent. Like he says loads of words with like the way that they do it. Like it sounds very weird to me. What was the story you gave? Did you live there or something?
No, I lived in Spain for 10 years and went to a European school, and both my parents have a really posh British accent actually, so if I'm at home for a couple of months, my accent kind of comes back, but I don't know, it's not something I really control. I just talk, and then after a couple of months of being like a team, my accent just disappears again and then comes back. I don't know, it's really weird.
Sure. Oh, no, listen, man, I'm not blaming you. Like, I had the same problem in the early days of Counter-Strike. I went to loads of tournaments, and because all the best players were Swedish, right, I had that cringe thing where, when you have like an internet term that you've only ever written, because this is back before the days of like voice comms. So when you say things out loud, obviously you don't think how it's going to be said. So I was saying like lul or whatever, like instead of because that's how Swedish people say it. So everyone was just going like, why are you saying that? Like, I had to be the equivalent of like the weeb who's like saying all the Japanese names instead of just like Naruto or something.
I mean, I just don't know. Like, I didn't know that there was a day before voice comms. Like, was this before like the telephone was invented, or like when were you playing games, Thorin?
What I used to do was arrange our scrims with a sundial, and then we would go play. So.
That sounds good to me, man.
Everyone had radios.
Exactly. Back when Caedrel used to play mid.
Holy shit. I mean, I actually wanted to start there with the topic because Caedrel used to play mid, but one thing that's interesting is he used to play with Santorin, right? Santorin was his jungler. Yeah. And Santorin obviously has had a huge resurgence. Caedrel actually played at the point in Santorin's career where everyone was flaming the guy. Everyone said this guy was irredeemable. After he was off TSM, he was like, he was cast out. He was the black sheep. People were like, oh, this guy is never going to make it.
If you remember, he also had that weird label, which is so weird if you look at him now, where he was considered like a shit tank jungler who has no mechanics. Even though if you actually look, everyone who's played with him now says he has a good mechanics, and in solo queue you can play Kazi, all this shit. So actually, he had I agreed on, he had a really weird reputation.
Yeah, and to pile on to that reputation, he was also considered like kind of like how people consider Broxah now as like a farm jungler. Yes. Like, oh, this guy just does nothing. He's just an AFK jungler, never make any plays in the game. And then, they'll win or lose. He'll have a nice KDA, but he's actually just not somebody who makes aggressive plays. And now if you look at him, he's like the only jungler that's going for all these crazy level 2 ganks, red into level 2 ganks, like around the map. Like he does this in almost, maybe like 1 in every 3 games he gets a kill like this and as well. But yeah, I mean, the question I wanted to ask Caedrel is how was it playing with Santorin back in that day? Do you think that he's improved a lot since when you played with him? Or did you think he was really good when you played with him when you were a mid laner?
Well, obviously, I think he improved a lot. I mean, when I signed to HUK, we were looking at junglers, and I think we had a few options. We had like Cold, Santorin, a couple others, and Santorin was rank 1 in NA at the time, I think. And I was saying to the coaching staff, I was like, I think Santorin, he looks fucking good from what I've seen in like solo queue and stuff. His mechanics look insane. He looks like a really good player. So we took I wouldn't say a risk, but like a gamble kind of on Santorin because we didn't really know how good he was, but I was pretty confident he was good. I mean, our relationship was really good. We would always wake up like almost at the same time, go out and eat breakfast together and like talk about everything every day. But I was obviously struggling and he was not having a good split either. So we both were at our kind of lowest points in our career where I was running it and then he was also running it and getting a lot of blame as well. So it was a decision for him to be removed from the team. Then I stepped out of the team as well, saying that I don't think I'm playing good either, so I don't want to play. but at the time, I mean, we were kind of really close friends. I just think the level of our play was not that good. So I think he's definitely improved a lot for sure.
I mean, I guess the thing that I would push back on here would be just like, do you believe he actually was running it down that split? Because I talked to him quite a bit, and from like watching the
What
games,
year was this? What year
this was 2018 spring.
2018 spring,
Okay.
yeah.
So this is 2018 spring, and
Oh, this is the H2K team we're talking about.
yeah, the H2K
Right.
team.
2.5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like he kind of just was limited by what was going on in the map. I mean, there was no lane that was like really winning at the time, and like when he's playing,
It's mid laner. Not being harsh. He was in LEC. LEC is the best mid lane region, so
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so did you think he was actually performing poorly, or do you think he was kind of just like a victim of circumstance? I mean, like as as a jungler on some teams that aren't the best, it's sometimes really hard to actually get anything done on the map when your teammates are underperforming. So like, how did you actually? Did you think that he was just like having a bad split individually? Was there anything that we like weren't able to see from the games?
Well, thinking back, I can remember that there was a lot of issues going around. First of all, as a team, we weren't proactive. Like, it felt like we were doing nothing, and all of our lanes were like either struggling or a little bit ahead here and there, but never really winning. And then we just kind of bled out most of our games being AFK, and then we obviously resorted to the jungle role, saying like, Santorin, what the fuck? You need to start doing something. And then that was where I think the issue started to begin. But as a jungler now, I can see that if you have weak laners, or either your lanes aren't communicating properly, or they're not pressuring enough, or they're not moving with you, it's really hard to actually make things happen. I mean, obviously the meta was different back then. You didn't have to just take first Drake and then make them fight you on the third one or whatever. But the meta for me was also really bad as a mid laner, because I was like a Lissandra Corki Galio player. I was like this utility late game carry kind of. And then the meta shifted to like Ryze, Syndra, Cassiopeia, and I was terrible at those champs. And I was having big problems with myself. And then our team was never really doing anything, so we just got smashed every game. And we won our first week. We lost to Vitality, and then we won against Fnatic, even though we were 10k behind, and we lost 6 towers in 15 minutes. We still won because we had Vayne Cassidin. So there was hope, but yeah, we got stomped the rest of the games.
Yeah. Were you surprised at all by like how well he started playing afterwards? Like, what was it? Because even in like summer, right? I think it was summer of 2018 when he was signed to Flyquest, and that's when he started looking good immediately. People were like, "Oh shit, this guy's actually good." And then starting in like spring of 2019, this guy has been essentially a top 3 jungler for like the rest of the last 2 years in NA.
Never seems to get the credit though. Bizarrely, it's like that narrative. It doesn't. It's not like it totally hangs over him, but he doesn't. Like even on the All Pro things, I didn't feel like he got that much credit.
Yeah, I agree with that. But were you
I think Santorin is for sure really good. I don't know. Yeah, 2018 summer when he was popping off Flyquest, obviously I think when he's all his time in NA, he's been playing really well, whether it's TSM Flyquest or even this year or last year. I think I feel like Santorin as a player, if he's comfortable in the team and confident in his laners, he looks really strong. I think that he didn't have much comfort in the team. I think I was obviously his closest friend on the team in HUK, but other than that, I don't think he had much of like he was in like his comfort zone kind of. I feel like he didn't trust some of the players, or he didn't think they were good. So I think if you have this kind of mentality, then obviously you won't perform well with the team. But I think that if he can trust his team and he does if he does feel comfortable, I think he obviously pops off from what we've seen. Like, look at him in Flyquest. Like, he's completely carrying the team. Well, not alone, but he's really carrying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that one of the reasons why Flyquest is so good right now is because they have the best jungler left in the tournament right now. I mean, when you compare him to people like Spica and Broxah, he's like a level above, I would say, at least, if not like 2 levels above.
Yeah.
So I think that just leads into Flyquest as a team right now. I mean, this team is going into finals as the first seed, or like they're the ones that are waiting in the winners bracket. They won the winners bracket. They're waiting for the winner of the losers bracket, the game between TL and TSM. And they look like the strongest team right now. I mean, do you have any opinions on this team originally? I know there's been a lot of criticism. I've been pretty low on Flyquest. I've been pretty vocal about how I think this team is not going to do well at Worlds. But I mean, obviously there's been some pushback from people. Some people think that Flyquest is actually strong. Like, where do you come down on Flyquest as a team right now, Caedrel?
I put it this way, Caedrel. The way that most people I've seen on Reddit for most of this year consider Flyquest is if they're doing well, it just makes them flame the region. Like, they don't say, "Oh, Flyquest is good." Like, think about the spring split when they made the finals. Everyone's just like, "Oh, well, if they make the final, C9's the only good team." So they kind of can't win in that sense. They just get flamed either way, don't they?
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, I don't know. Flyquest, I think, is the best team in NA. I think that the meta right now is really, really around jungle support, and I think they have the best jungle and the best support. I think Ignar is really fucking good as well.
Damn, over Core
that
JJ.
guy has. Well, I think Ignore is just the player who gives no fucks, probably. Like, if this guy's on Leona or Alistar or Nautilus, that guy's going to do the Hylissang, whatever. He's just going to flash in and start the fight. And at first, you're going to be like, what the fuck's he doing? And then 2 seconds later, you're like, oh, he just won us the game. So I think
Okay.
Ignore is really, really intelligent, for sure. I think he has, like, big balls as well. He's not going to pick a range support and sit there and farm, I think. Which is what he was, like, really known for in Europe. And I think, yeah, it's a huge jungle support matter. I think their mid laner PoE is reliable. I think if you have a reliable mid who's always going to be ahead, like when I watched their series against... I don't remember who it was. He was just playing like Orianna. Yeah, against TL. I think he was just picking Orianna. And even though he wasn't roaming like Jensen was or like making huge plays, his CS numbers were like through the roof. So as soon as it came to like Drake fights, this guy was so strong on Orianna. He had like shutdowns with no kills or assists. So I mean, he was farming really well. So you have like this rock in mid, and then the jungle support who are like super good. And then I think their AD carry and top just fit in well. I don't think it's like a huge AD carry or top meta when it's like Ashe Senna and top lane is just tanks or a bit of Camille here and there. Even though I think they're sinning with their drafts and picking like fucking set here and there, I think in tops, I think they're definitely the strongest team in NA, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. Do you have any worry about like some of the drafting from Flyquest? Because for me, when I see, Caitlyn first picked by the enemy team, you pick Ashe, enemy team picks like a Lux, and then your counter pick is Rakan as support. Does that worry you at all? Because for me, I'm just like, damn, you're just gonna lose bot lane by like 50 CS. I mean, imagine like playing against one of these really, really high level bot lanes. Like, if you play against an AD carry like Jackie Love, you give him a free lane phase like that, this guy's gonna run over the whole game. So going into Worlds, are you at all scared about like Flyquest drafting? Like, do you think that they're gonna have to adapt to the other meta? Because Ignar essentially does what you said. He picks like an engage support every single game, regardless of the circumstance. But I feel like a range support is not like, or it's not always good to just pick an engage support. There are times where range support is optimal. There is times when you need to like be able to match an enchanter support or something like that. And I just don't know if he's able to do it.
I think the weakest thing I've seen from NA is their laners. I think the laning of North American players is the weakest point they have right now. I mean, their macro is pretty bad over side lanes as well, apart from Flyquest, and their Drake fights and setups are really poor as well. I see like teams losing these random fights on Drake for no reason, like the Flyquest game where the Kalista is completely out of it, and then they just grief a team fight in bot, and then they grief a team fight in their red side jungle, like fighting over really bad zones. But I think their laning phases are the biggest thing to target for teams. Like I think if you had like solo versus Nuguri, I think that's going to be a bit one-sided. Or if you had like Chovy or Showmaker versus PoE, and even though PoE can farm and go even and get a CS advantage, I think that Showmaker or whatever, or Chovy is going to be running bot, diving your bot lane, killing them both, finding enemy jungle, and PoE is kind of let off the hook against NA mids or like some of the top tier mids like Jensen or stuff like this, maybe because either they're held back by their team and they can't make these plays, or they're just not as proactive as teams like as Damwon or whatever, because I think that the communication between the Damwon roster is so good. I think that your top lane will get dove and stuff like this, but maybe the communication in NA teams in the early phases of the laning phase is not as good. So I think against top teams, they won't be let off the hook like that.
Yeah,
I actually think that just like when Cloud9, when we thought they were going to go to Worlds tragically, which they obviously aren't now, in the same way as I said, even though Blabber's dominating in LCS right now, unfortunately, I think he's going to have trouble when he goes to like actual Worlds. He's on stage, he has to play all the best jungles in the world. Make the same application for Ignar. Because the problem I have with Ignar is, like you just said there, listen, when it works in the comp, it's fine that he picks those champions. But he's like the guy who does like the skill matchup where it's like, oh, but I'm just really good on that champion, bro, so I'm going to pick it anyway. It's like, at Worlds, it's really hard to just pick like a comfort pick that's not a meta pick. Like you basically have to pick the best champions. That's why that meta emerges during Worlds of what's the best and what people are banning. Like that guy's just making it too easy. Because think about it, right? You don't even have to waste any bans on any of those supports that he doesn't play. You never have to ban one.
It's the same with bot lane. I agree with Doran. It's like he can just pick Leona and go 5 CS down on his AD carry and then just carry by just basing and running top with Moby Boots and killing your top because he's been let off the hook, right? It's not like he's being under too much pressure even when he's outdrafted himself in the lane because he knows in team fights or in roaming he's just going to take over. So yeah.
Do you feel like there's any hope in like the boot camp? Because like a lot of times you'll see teams be able to progress in the boot camp. Famously, G2 did this a lot last year. Where they said when they went to when they started scrimming at Worlds or started scrimming in EU versus the Asian teams. Last year they were significantly worse. Like they were getting like 11-0'd by Damwon. I mean it was really bad. And then they were just able to kind of like pick it up. Like by playing against them enough, they were able to adapt and become one of the better teams. Do you think this is like a possibility? Because for me, this is the only way I see that NA could potentially do something at Worlds. I think that in this current state, like at the level that NA is playing at, it's absolutely hopeless. But do you like? I guess my question would be like, do you think that there's any hope when it comes to like boot camping and like getting better through that? Like maybe they haven't been exposed to that enough, where they're not able to actually adapt to what it's like to play against people that will punish their picks so hard.
Thorin is smiling so much. I know he said something.
I didn't have anything about that, so answer that question. I'll tell you what I was smiling about.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you scrim EU and LPL teams as like a top NA team, I think if you face their playstyles, you realize how smacked you're gonna get. I think like just either it's laning phases or like I don't know, Caps taking over the side lanes or Knight just completely carrying all the fights just because your positionings are all terrible and you get punished for making these small mistakes, which you kind of get a lot off the hook in the NA for. So I think it's all about adapting for us. I mean, as a pro player, if you kind of lose scrims to another team just because they're playing differently, you have to quickly problem solve as to what they're doing differently to you. So it all depends on how smart the players are individually, I think, and how good the coaching staff is, because you can face a team, get smashed, but figuring out how they smash you and why they smash you and then adopting their styles is the most important thing, which is the most difficult thing, actually taking what they did and trying it yourself. So it all depends on how creative and like dedicated the players are in changing up their styles, or how sort of in denial they are. If you say like, oh well, they picked Cape Morgana and took your bot tower in 5 minutes, you should do the same, and they're like, nah, Morgana sucks, I don't want to play that, then obviously the team's never going to grow. But if you have like, for example, G2 is just known for it, if they see like a pick, whether it's like Pike jungle, Pike top, all these psycho picks like Kled mid and stuff like this, they're so open to it, just try it, and if it doesn't work, we'll just go back to the old style. If it does work, we're just going to pull it out randomly in best of 5, so, or even best of 1s in World's group stage. So I think Flyquest or NA in general just has to find these pocket picks and find these different playstyles and just adapt to different types of meta, because I think LPL is different, LCK is different, Europe's different, and NA is different. So
to me, the only issue is this is where unfortunately LCS has a really bad matchup compared to LEC. Is, let's be real, because LEC's always had amazing mids, and nearly always the amazing mids are the ones that go to Worlds. A minimum, you have one lane you can play through. And if you actually send like a Forgiven, a Records, you also maybe can play through bot lane as well. But the problem is, in LCS, look at the teams that are left in the playoffs now. Listen, I think like Jensen can be a very good player at National. He hasn't been for a while, but he can be. Aside from that, aside from Bjergsen, Jensen, there's not that many players who are like strong laners. Like, listen, Impact can play the lane, but he's not going to smash the lane versus like, I mean, the Shy isn't going, but some like monsters. So the problem is, it's going to be hard to win any game where, in theory, most lanes are just going to be behind, like you kind of said before. No, the thing I was laughing about before was, right, normally when we do this show, Dom has like all these questions he wants to ask about someone's career, and it's like the first hour or so is just about like the teams we on. But what I realized was he did like one question about a team you were on, just to transition into Santorin, to talk about Flyquest. And what I've realized, Caedrel, is one, he doesn't give a fuck about your career because you've done nothing. And secondly, more importantly, Dom doesn't, because he doesn't give a fuck, he really just wanted to talk about all the games this weekend, but because Face Check got like postponed and cancelled, but this just is Face Check. Like, obviously I'm playing the role of LS, you're D-Gon, so...
Wait.
Thorin, it feels, every time I go on a show with Thorin, it feels personal. Every single time he has to rail me.
Technically, it was Dom who did. He was just like, all right, yeah, Caedrel, remember that team you were in season 8? You were like, yeah. He was like, right, enough about that anyway. What about that player you play with? He had a great career, didn't he? So what did he used to have for breakfast? Did he like honey in that? Like, well, I used to like, well, shut the fuck up about Pop-Tarts. What did he like? Like,
I mean,
it was only last week I was on the show with you and Mons Christo, and you were still grailing me there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's personal. I'm convinced.
Yeah, no, Thorin just has some, I guess, some like national hatred or something. Like.
No, I'll tell you one of the reasons why. I'll tell you straight up now.
Okay.
Because basically, people did with Caedrel what they did with actually one of his teammates, Salfi. Which is because earlier in their careers, there was reasons why people thought they were good players, or people who knew them, for example, were like, oh, they have a good mentality, or they could be better. Basically, people saying like they're underrated. And the problem is, in saying they were underrated, so in the case of Caedrel, it was obviously Veteran who was going on and on about him all the time. He used to make Caedrel all the time sound like he was the most like genius, cerebral meta jungler of all time. It was like, and the problem is, I would go and watch the game, and even though I agree, some of his decision making was good. He wasn't. First of all, he wasn't even sometimes winning the jungle matchup, and then he wasn't some monster jungle. Like if he was describing you like I would have described like Tarzan last year. Like I'm obviously giving like for comedic effect slight exaggeration, but because he used to do that, I always used to tell him like mate, you're going to get this guy killed. Like, if you keep saying all that stuff, people are going to expect it in the game. And then when it doesn't happen, that's why I gave the selfie example, because everyone kept hope that guy would come back to be really good as a mid for like 5 years, dude. It's like, mate, eventually we have to just write this one off. Like, we have to just be reasonable and say he's just an okay player. So I don't hate on you, kid. Well, you're an all right player. Your strong suit is, mate, very fluent in English. And you know what? All the on-camera work, that's just speaking in English. So stick to the speaking. Let someone else do all the shit with the fingers.
Well, I
mean, I can see where you're coming from. I need some results first, but I'll try my best to get the results. And if I get those results next year or something, I'm gonna shit all over you.
Then you come on Roasters, yeah, exactly. Do it.
Damn, that's actually how Thorn tries to motivate players of the region he cares about. He just flames them just so that they are just motivated to win. Not even so that they get
Exactly.
not even for the accolades. Like, fuck winning. Oh. It's just they want to come back and flame Thorin instead.
Yeah, like I'm like a secret coach. Like, I basically got TSM into Worlds. Like, they weren't even going to go to Worlds, so I started talking shit. So come back on the show in a year with your little Heimerdinger glasses and fucking start roasting me.
I can't believe it. I mean, the day will come. The day will come.
Okay. I mean, the thing. I actually feel the opposite. I mean, I feel like jungle is like pretty.
Come on these shows with Thorin, man.
I mean, I feel like Caedrel is like a little bit just hamstrung by his teammates, right? Like when I look at this, like, I mean, okay, so I spent the entire split.
Solo lanes particularly, let's be real.
Well, I think Kryze is okay. Like, he's redeemable. I think Special is just dog shit, personally. Like, I'm like, this guy is the worst mid in LEC by far. I don't even think there's an option. Like, you can't even be like, oh, well, maybe Nuke Duck is as bad. It's like Nuke Duck played bad, but Special was worse. So I feel
yeah. Here's the thing: people also say that, like, when Special was at the National League level, he was good, and Screams he's good. But he's another problem where, put it this way, the polite way to say it to Caedrel is, I suspect he just has issues on stage or in the official matches. Like, he looks way worse than the hype that people were giving him. So, like, not like Caedrel's going to go, yeah, he's shit, isn't he? Oh, he's still on our team. Like, he's never going to say that. So I'm just saying, like, I definitely think he has issues. Even with Kryze, though, there's another player that obviously was hyped when we were coming in from our Elitist United show because he was like a carry top laner. That I found him so underwhelming, though. I know what you mean, Dom. He's not bad. Like, by the time it got halfway through the split, he'd sort of got his shit together. But even then, he clearly had a super limited champion pool. He would
it's not even limited.
Like, he would like force Vladimir picks when it didn't even make sense and stuff. Like, he had some really weird. Like, so my problem is, if you're a good player, like the Ignar example, but you have to have everything forced around you, you don't have to be the best player. It's not just about being good anymore. If you force the game around you with the meta, like, you have to be even better to justify that, in my opinion. Like, here's the difference. If Blitzcrank wasn't in the meta, but you had Mad Life, yeah, of course you let him pick it. You don't let some motherfucker pick it when it's not even in the meta, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for Kryze, he's a weird player because it's not like, to me, he can't play champions. Like, it seems like he can play every champion in the game except for like the 3 or 4 that are really, really OP and good right now, which is like, come on, like, you can't play Ornn like ever. Like, where are the Ornn picks coming out? I mean, there's some games where you just need your top laner to just bite the bullet, pick fucking Ornn, and then just let Patrick carry the entire game, right? Like, that's an option for you. I actually think that Caedrel just needs different laners. I don't think that Caedrel's utilized in the right way because I feel like if you have a brain jungler, right, which I do put Caedrel, like, there's 2 different types of junglers. It's like the brain junglers and the 1v9 junglers, right? The 1v9 junglers is somebody like Selfmade, I feel like, where he's just going to take like the Hecarim, Eve, he's just going to try to get a bunch of kills, Kha'Zix, and try to carry the whole game alone. You have Caedrel, who's going to be like, I'm going to pick like the champions that are best right now, that can like win every jungle matchup, get ahead in terms of like farm and just snowball the game through Dragon. Like, he wants to just play properly, right? I feel like that's Caedrel's the type of player where you need to like put good laners around him. Like, that's what you need. And then, like, if you put Caedrel on the top team, I think that he could be good. I just feel like
to be on Flyquest. That's the sort of team that would work for you, man.
Honestly,
tell Santorin, I'm kicking you off another team and taking your spot, motherfucker.
Exactly.
Call me the kid.
I never kicked him off the team.
Call me the Grig to your Acadian motherfucker.
Oh my god.
Jesus, just pull the fucking Kikis and Gilius on him, man. You think Gilius is safe because he just popped off an entire split? Dude, Kikis is coming, man. Kikis is just waiting in Poland for this motherfucker. Like, oh no, he doesn't even know what's coming.
Sitting in the house with his TV screens, when's it gonna happen?
Yeah, no,
the funny
it's so
thing
fucking
is,
perfect.
Caedrel, like I said before, that basically is part of why I think he used to get flamed, mate. Because obviously I've experienced it myself, where if I have a favorite player and they're not doing well, everyone flames them harder to try and like get to me and hurt me, my feelings or something is what's going to happen. So I do feel like people have gone super hard on you, mate. Like, there's plenty of players who've been in your position who barely even got mentioned by people in terms of flame. They just let them play and they're like, okay, I just don't like him. But like, I actually think that's why doing like LEC and coming on shows, like, you should have done that a long time ago. Because if you're someone who's cerebral and you can talk well, just being able to explain yourself, I think, actually makes people like understand what's going on way more. They kind of see your perspective, you know.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's been really fun. I didn't really get invited until this end of summer split, so yeah, I guess doing it early would have helped. But I don't know. I don't really care about the flame and stuff. I mean, there's this. Obviously, I haven't made playoffs in a while, so it's like really like a burden on me. So it's something I have to do. But just going back to the general points, I can't really talk about my teammates on the live, I guess. But
Yeah,
just
it's
a
okay.
small point about Kreis is just the thing you have to understand about Kreis is he's only played competitively for 1 year, and that 1 year has been in a Nordic region, which at the time was complete dog shit, which was last year. So
Yes.
his whole competitive experience of last year was the dog shit region where he didn't even like scrim. He just played for fun, and then he played spring split of this year with the Unicorns of Love, which is in like a German league, and they finished really high up on the standings. They didn't make EU Masters, but he was literally carrying that team so hard. It's crazy. You would see his games where he's playing like Jax Camille.
No, it
He's
was
like
sick. Yeah.
10-0 ending side lane. So he was kind of nervous coming into summer split because obviously he's never even been to EU Masters. He's been playing the game for like 4 years or so. He's never really played competitive. He didn't even think about being an LEC pro until recently. Um, and obviously he was nervous. He did start off come out the games with a small champion pool, all these things. I think he grew well throughout the split. I think given time, like another year or so, I think he'll be a really, really strong player for sure. He just has to get over the idea of like nervousness and stuff. And it is true he didn't really want to pick tanks. He is the kind of person who just says pick me Camille or Jax, Wukong, stuff like this, and I'll just carry like Nuguri kind of. But obviously he did have a few issues on stage. There was games where he was playing Camille and he was carrying the games, but in scrims for sure, this guy was one of the strongest laners
Right.
from my point of view. In terms of just straight laning phase, he is definitely one of the best laners in scrims. But he has way more concepts to learn. He's never actually been taught the game before. His old coaches weren't even coaches. It was just 5 players. So there's a lot of concepts he still has to learn. And even after summer split, he still has room for growth because he's still not kind of grasped all the concepts about team fighting, TPs, side waves, when he moves to mid, how he should use his prio, when he should base and run top and cover his mid laner, all this stuff. But I think in terms of pure lane phase, he's really strong. But he just needs more time.
Yep. Are you worried at all? I mean, just by the way you're describing him, are you worried at all when it gets like to next year, assuming that, you know, people are allowed to play on stage again? Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen with COVID. Maybe we're just going to spend like online for another year. But whenever you make the transition back to stage, if you're a player that's getting nervous on, you know, official games offline, or online rather, like, are you kind of scared when it moves to offline again? Like, oh shit, like maybe this guy's going to have to adapt to like playing on stage, because playing on stage is like a whole different level of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big things for stage are like the atmosphere, and then when you get on stage, you have like the white noise and stuff. So it's a hugely different environment than just sitting in your fucking underwear on your fucking PC at home, you know. So
Yeah, your jail cell there, we see it. It's on the
yeah,
camera.
my jail cell right behind me.
Yeah.
I mean, Kreis has never actually played on stage in his life. I think maybe he's played like a LAN here and there, but he's never really played on stage. So obviously it's gonna be something new for him. I think it's gonna take a couple of weeks to adapt. I think that's natural. It's just how long he takes with his curve of just kind of growing on stage and whether he can use that pressure to his advantage. Like I think players like Bwipo, for example, probably came on the stage with nerves, but as they
LEC
kind of got more
legend, Whipple, refer to him by his
LEC
real name.
legend, LEC legend Bwipo. I think he came. Well, I was watching a little bit of it, and he seemed nervous on his first few games. But then once he's on stage, he kind of converts the pressure into performance in a way. So if he can do that, then I think he'll be good for sure. Just needs time for sure. Yeah.
Yep. You just have to win the flip, I guess, in that situation, you know, like.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the staff can help him as well. I'm sure he'll adapt the stage.
But can the staff really help you? Like, because I mean, I feel like it's just like you have it or you're not when you step on that stage. Like you're like, there's nothing that can actually prepare you for being in that environment. Like I don't care what a sports psychologist says to you. Like, oh man, like you just gotta like be in the moment. Like you gotta just like actualize everything and like feel like you're comfortable. You know, understand, like mentally focus on what you want to do. All that stuff is great. But like when you're on stage and you actually just like feel the pressure, I feel like it's different. It's kind of like a make or break type thing.
I think you're right to an extent. I think it's like 80 to 70% is you, like when you get in the moment. But I think there are things you can do leading up to it. Like we have like we have someone called Fabian who really helps us out of the game, whether it's like breathing techniques or dealing with pressure, dealing with stress. Just
yeah, I know.
Vivint, no.
Oh no, different
Yeah, Featherman helps them with itemization, builds.
Yeah, Featherman,
like
he works for our team behind the scenes.
Okay.
No, seriously, his name's Fabian, and Simon also works for us, and they help us a lot with just dealing with pressure. And I think lots of players who deal with stress and pressure, I think one of the big problems they have is they don't actually tell anyone about it. They kind of just keep it themselves, and they just gets worse and worse, and it builds up, and then they get really stressed. But I think having someone to just be honest with, you know, and just actually say, yeah, I'm fucking nervous right now. I don't know what to do. And then they can actually tell you, obviously not going to just solve the problem like this, but just giving you advice, whether it's like, you should do this instead. Routine, try and get habits, trying to calm down, try breathing techniques, try sort of posture or changing your desk or doing a pre-game ritual or something like this just to help you. So I agree to an extent it's not going to help you. I think 70% is rough, 78% is roughly your own head. But I think there are external factors which can kind of help. So just helping as much as you can with players like rookies, just being thrown on stage is definitely something you have to do.
That's why I think all teams, obviously they need a good one. You can't just have anyone, but all teams need sports psychologists, in my opinion, especially for the rookies, because like that's half the problem. It's like, as you say there, half the issue is this, and I've dealt with this my whole career, mate. People who choke in the game never admit it until they get over it. It's actually sad. So here's what's funny. If you asked Jankos now, did you ever choke in any of those games? He was infamous for going to semi-finals and losing like every game 5 ever, right?
He'll say
with all different teammates. He'll always just be like, he'll have a million other reasons. It'll be like, oh, that day I wasn't feeling good, or, you know, the draft was bad, or it just, and what he's never getting to is like, yeah, okay, mate, that's all true in isolation. Each one of those things is correct, but what's the through line? The through line is somehow you were in a big game, this pressure got to you, and you just didn't play your best. It's not even that you're always bad. That's the other thing. You're not even that you're always like choked in the sense that you were the worst, but maybe you just didn't play the best. And if you were like a star jungler, that might be why you lose. So the problem is there's too much of a stigma attached to it. I get it. Like, these are young men, you know, they're obviously good at the game, so you don't want to be thought of as like a guy who's like that. Because unfortunately, if you tell people you have that stigma, people think it's like weakness as a person, like your character's flawed or something. But the reason that never makes sense is, think about, I always give this analogy, right, to help people think of pro player. If it's like a competitive ladder, and each rung of the ladder is like how you have to learn to go through your career. So you start off, you're a good player online. That's why you get picked up by a team. But then you're in a team, and there's pressure when you play in a team that's different. So you have to learn to deal with that. Then you win online. I mean, now everything's online, but in the past you would go online first. Then you go to your first lands. And the idea is, some people fall at each rung, but you gradually do it. So even people who are like legends, like right now, people would say the most clutch player in Europe is Perks. Everyone go and look at his first year internationally. He was having fucking nightmare games. So it's not actually like, you're not a shit human or someone who'll never succeed if you choke. You just have to, like Caedrel say, the best thing you can do is be honest. And that way people can help you with your problem. People can kind of see where your head's at, or some teammate actually, like if some guy who's your captain might be able to say something to you during the game, or hey, like one of the things you were saying there, where you can have like a pre-game ritual. I know people like Weldon, one of the things that they do, which is like a very classic, like simple sports psychology technique, is you give someone what's called an anchor. Like, you make it so that when they're in this pressure situation, they do something at the beginning of the game, like they wait and they like wait 5 seconds, maybe they put their hands in a certain position. And the idea is, if they feel stressed, they can do that, and they feel like it centers them. It doesn't really. The psychological trick is, it just makes you focus on something else for a second and stop like all your thoughts in your fucking head just banging off everything. So yeah, I think that's a massive issue. Like, you can never know if someone's going to make it, because the problem is, because it's stigmatized. Dude, every up-and-coming rookie is always so cocky before they get to the stage. They all think, right? Like, dude, like that thing
Especially
where Malice was flaming you. You know when Malice was flaming you on Twitter? Like, I even said it on a show. I was like, he probably thinks, because if he played you on EUS solo queue, he could do as well as you, or better if it was like Evelyn matchup or something. He probably imagines, like, oh, this guy's a shit jungler. It's like, bro, you haven't even been there. You haven't even played one stage match in LEC. For all we know, Malice, you play a stage match and you fold like fucking Superman on laundry day, motherfucker. You're suddenly the guy flaming. Like, that can happen. So it's like that classic Mike Tyson quote, like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. That's what going on stage is like. Like, you think you're ready for it because you've never been in that environment. It is a great one, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's exactly that. I mean, you think, like, every jungler is gangster until you get level 1 invaded, and you're just in that situation where you're starting on your fucking wolves, Half-Life, the enemy jungler has, like, your whole fucking, like, red side cleared. That's when you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, then you're like, okay, now I'm fucking scared. So, I mean, I completely agree with the analysis there and, like, how important sports psychology is. But obviously, this episode, I want to jump into both NA and EU. I feel like we have the perfect guest to do it. So we already talked about Flyquest, one matchup that I think we should hit in NA before we jump to
the other games were pretty shit, I thought, personally, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, well, there's two things, right? I think
bad teams winning, who cares, right? So
TSM C9, I feel like that's one that we need to talk about, right? Because when we were discussing teams, you know, from NA, C9 is the one that actually played the most like a Chinese or like an aggressive European team.
Yeah. They had the right meta to go to Worlds, sadly.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, when I see a team like that and that team gets knocked out, it kind of like makes you feel doomed in terms of like how NA is in general. For a team that was like so strong, what are your opinions on like how they ended up dropping out? I mean, you watched all the games with me, so How did you feel watching C9 play versus TSM?
I don't know. So from the thing what I saw in that series was, I mean, the two biggest things I saw was, first of all,
Liquors is
Biofrost
creeping.
was, oh yeah, Liquor Scream. Biofrost was countering himself in lane every game by picking Rakan, and they weren't openly countering him in bot lane that hard. And so when it came to like lane matchups, whether Bjergsen was picking Zillion or they were picking Rakan bot or they were picking like bad top matchups or whatever, like they weren't getting punished at all. Like I said earlier, like the lanes were just even. And I think just when it came to team fights, just C9 looked so split up. I mean, I didn't watch much of their regular split games in spring or summer, but from what I saw from stats, it was like Blabber just getting fucking fed by invading enemy jungle, killing him, and then just killing every lane basically. So it just felt like he was doing whatever he wanted. But I don't know. I guess TSM just controlled Blabber by banning out Olaf a lot, and then they were just trying to get good jungle matchups or whatever. But just in general from that series, I think that the lanes weren't winning when they should. Like you pick Lucian into Zillion and you go even, doesn't make any sense. And then other points were just like side lanes. Like I think TSM was terrible in their other game. I can't remember who it was against, GGS, I think, at covering side lane, but they slightly got better at it, and then they kind of avoided it as well. Like Bjergsen would just like run bot, press 2 bombs, never push out side lane, just run group mid, and then just help his team. So they were grouping a lot more, and I don't know. I see just looked like C9 didn't really have an answer. And when they did try to answer, when the game's even, when they have like Rakan or Orianna and stuff like this, it's just like the team fights were kind of hard, and Sven kind of got popped. And I think another kind of change is like the meta shift, because I think Sven can't play super carry AD carries anymore. He has like
Dude, nobody in that series wanted to play Caitlyn. What the fuck is that?
The Caitlyn bans were really cringe as well. Like blue side banning Caitlyn, like that didn't make any sense. And then like there's just Ezreal, Ashe, Senna, so you can't really single-handedly carry a game with those 3 champs. Maybe Ezreal is arguable if you get to mid game, like it's kind of even or ahead, but you can't really pick like Kai'Sa, Aphelios. There's not much Kalista anymore either and stuff like this. So I don't know. It just feels like maybe Sven can't carry the team if Blabber's not ahead, and then if Blabber's not ahead, then GG. And I think that I watched there's a lot of level 1 invades going on in NA, which are kind of shutting down junglers. And I think Blabber got shut down, not just, maybe not in the TSM series as much, but just in general, just by like Flyquest as well and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I think their entire team pretty much just collapsed. Like, here's the problem what people always have. The problem is people don't want to tear entire teams apart if they were good. They want to replace one player, right? So what people do, it's also called single factor analysis. You pick the one thing, oh, he's the reason they're losing. So you try and kick that player, right? But if a team ever collapses like this, I guarantee you, except for extreme cases where a guy went from like a 10 to a 2, it's nearly always like most of the team has a problem. Either like stylistically, or in this case, even individually, most Cloud9 players look really bad right now. Like as soon as Blabber dropped off, and I won't even say he was always bad. Some of it was just getting him onto champions he isn't that good on, like don't fit his playing style. Because the thing about this guy, there's another thing I told you all in the spring. This guy would play like fucking, he plays Sejuani like it's Lee Sin. Like that's just his, he's not doing that because it's an aggressive champion. That's just the way he plays jungle. So the problem is you make him mad ineffective when you got him on those champions. And as soon as he falls away, Nisqy just becomes a mid laner. And as I've been telling everyone for years now, as just a pure mid laner where you have to actually farm in the lane, he's just an okay player, just like he was in Europe. He's not some god fucking mid. Like, I don't know why people had to overrate him. I get it. When him and Blabber were sick, as a 2v2, they were the best. But individually, was he the best mid laner? I don't know about that. So then you look at the rest of the team. Sven, clearly, as you're saying, his champion pool was shit right now. Even on Ezreal, dude, he was getting up to TSM tricks. He was fucking E'ing into bushes again. What is this motherfucker doing? Like, do you learn? Like, that's the crazy thing. It's like he rolled back the clock to the TSM days. And then, of course, listen, I won't even blame Vulcan because he almost had nothing he could do in the game. But the player I will definitely say, this is the one area where I don't mind LS going mad. I don't even watch the stream with like people's comms and stuff. I just watch the VOD and I just have the sound off, etc. Like, but even I who don't know much about itemization, I didn't understand half of Licorice's buys in this fucking series. I still don't know what he was doing. Like, he must be on some next level fucking like dark technology or something, like some crazy shit. So, like, dude, think how many problems I've just stacked there. Like, 4 players are having massive problems, and yet, you know what? Yeah. This is how next level I am, Caedrel. I'm still going to spin it. So the end of the paragraph is a burn on TSM, which is despite all those problems from Cloud9. Here's why TSM won't do well at Worlds, because they have to do sneak picks of Zillion to win these series. Homie, there ain't going to be any sneak picks of Zillion in series at Worlds. You're not going to win against Rookie and Showmaker. I mean, Rookie isn't going, but you're not going to win against those players doing that. That only works, in my opinion, in NA, because no one else plays that shit. So it's not even like the champion's broken, is it? It's just if you've never played against it, you're never going to have a feel for what should happen, what happens next, how you counter that. So, in my opinion, you see how I spun it there to be a TSM here. But actually, it was mainly about Cloud9 being shit.
Yeah, I think if you pick like Zillion Skarner at Worlds, I think you're gonna get fucking stomped personally,
2v2?
because both those champs are useless. Yeah, I think those champs are just so useless, no damage. Like, I don't know. I think they're gonna get stomped in your side lanes. You're gonna get dove on cooldown. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Licorice just not only his items, but the champions he's playing in top lane were just so fucking useless. Like, it was like Set, Lilia, and Wukong or something, and then even in the Wukong game, he does his flash keys, which is completely broken.
Sure.
I think Licorice was having a terrible game, and then just my Rakan point, like TSM literally blind pick Rakan, and then C9 just answer with Braum, and then like Rakan counters Braum, so it doesn't make any sense to pick Braum into Rakan and stuff like this. And yeah, I think
Of
Sven.
course, you've got to get the cheeky Tom Kent pick in to lose the whole series and go out of fucking worlds. Why do people do these picks? I don't know. Like that's one thing I would say if I was a coach is I'd say, listen, guys, I'm not going to try and influence you one way or another. I'm not going to tell you, pressure you to pick the meta pick. I'm not telling you pick. All I'm going to tell you is this: if you were to lose the game, be happy with the champion you picked. That's all I'll tell you. Because the worst feeling ever has to be when you do some shit like that. Where you just do nothing all game long. You're like, well, guess I'm just going to go home and cry my eyes out. Like, fucking hell, give me a break.
Yeah. And like another small thing I was gonna say was just like the mechanics were just terrible. Like the Tam eating and getting bombed and dying for the double kill, and like Sven face checking Baron, literally just walking in a straight line and getting turned on. And I think, yeah, I mean TSM drafted really well against him. Like they banned Kalista, they banned Olaf, and then C9 just looked a bit dizzy with their top lane picks. Their mid lane picks were kind of off, but they weren't winning that much as they should, I think. And then, yeah. It was just lost.
I mean, can you give any context to the double longsword into the blue hoodie versus as Set versus Lucian? Because to me, I'm like, oh man, this guy's gonna get some armor. You know, maybe a bramble vestal throw in there. Like it'll be something.
Yeah, it's 2 swords into a blue hoodie. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so why are you getting the blue hoodie in that lane? Is there something that I'm missing out on?
I remember they had like some AP on their team, if I can remember. I think they had like AP jungle mid, maybe. Yeah, they had like Evelyn TF. I'm looking now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if you have 2 longswords and a hoodie, I think Lucian's gonna stomp you with his cutlass. So it was a bit grief. I think maybe go Ninja Tabi into like double longsword into Ninja Tabi and then start building MR maybe or something. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
the drafts were terrible. The gameplay was cringe, illegal, all this stuff, and yeah. I think the only arguably decent player was Sven of that series.
Okay.
You mean for Cloud9? Like the sad thing is though, mate, even for TSM, they didn't have that many good players. Like Bjergsen was good, Doublelift was all right. Like, mate, the sad thing about this series was I was trolling before, obviously, when I said it was bad games, just to imply that like Fnatic and TSM winning is bad. So I was just doing my whole like narrative or whatever. But in reality, this was not a great series of League of Legends. Like this was fucking quite bad from both teams. Like put it this way, both the junglers were just feeding all their tits off all game long. Like it was mental. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like because Blava did badly that Spica carried the series. Did he? Fuck, mate. He was tilting his tits off too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that Spica is like he's randomly like okay, and then he'll always just throw the game randomly. Like he has that quality that we see from like certain players, the turtle gene, where it's like, all right, you're doing good, man. This is like a perfect fucking game, and then he just like randomly gets caught, and the whole game looks doomed for a second, and then maybe Bjergsen carries it anyway. I mean, I think the weird thing about TSM is that like. Theoretically, for when you look at the team, like they should have a good bot lane, especially in the laning phase. Like they have Biofrost, Doublelift bot lane, and for some reason TSM just can't win bot lane. I mean, obviously now they're just defaulting to the Rakan pick, so they're like kind of just accepting losing lane. But it's super weird to me to see like Bjergsen having to 1v9 even with these teammates. I mean, Broken Blade does have good games. I don't think Broken Blade is that good right now at carrying the entire game. Like he gets leads in lane phase, and then he'll like randomly die and stuff, and the game will get like a little bit iffy. But
to be fair, there's not a lot of top laners anywhere really carry, except in like the Asian countries. So
yeah,
I don't blame him that much for that. It's just kind of the meta, isn't it?
Sure, but I just feel like in general, like Broken Blade is a good laner. He'll get leads in matchups that he shouldn't a lot of the time, but then there are just issues with him being able to like play side lane throughout the game. But it feels like Bjergsen actually just has to 1v9 every single game. Like I think Bjergsen is really playing well.
I agree.
You need to know about the way TSM's set up right now and the fact that they did make Worlds. I'll give credit to Doublelift for one thing. He clearly got humbled before this series, after those 2 GGS series, because in this series, he was the fucking supportive AD carry, utility AD carry, so that Broken Blade could be a carry. Mm-hmm. They actually basically did what we've been talking about all year, that like basically for Broken Blade needs to be a carry player, and as a result, you can't just have everyone be a carry, so you're nearly going to have to always make the ADC actually sort of give up resources. So the one thing Doublelift never did, fair play, at least he did it. At least he humbled himself because he knew he wasn't going to go to Worlds otherwise.
Yeah,
so that's fair play.
Okay, so sure. So then what is the advantage of Doublelift over Kabi then? If you're just going to have a support of it.
Yeah, the joke for me is, I'm no joke think that if they really knew what the meta was going to be like this summer, you just keep Kobe, mate. He's perfect for what their team wanted. I think he would have been a great player to have on their team. I think he would have been better.
Yep, I agree with that,
No matter
actually.
what else, yes, if they had him, dude.
Yeah.
Not even trolling.
Solid. Caedrel, do you have an opinion on TL versus TSM? You think TSM's gonna win TL? I mean, both teams look kind of rough going in.
I think TL will win just based on the fact that, okay, so first of all, I don't understand why all these NA top laners champion pools. I don't get it. Okay, so you had like Lilia, Sett, Wukong, and then on the other side you had like Jace and Lucian top. It's like, okay, the Jace is arguable, but it's only kind of being played in Korea because they're really fucking good, and maybe China as well, because they know how to play around the Jace top. But it's just like these champs look so useless. Like they were all grouping together. He had like a 10 CS lead on all these champs, and they were just team fighting. So I think when you go against a player like Impact, who he would just say, yeah, just pick me fucking Orin, I'll go 5 CS down, and then he just press R and kill your AD carry. So, or Mordekaiser, yeah, something like this, and just, okay, maybe not Mordekaiser because I think he'll get stomped in lane, but just Orin or something like a team fight, Kennen, Shen, I don't know, whatever it is, and then he'll just press R and win the team fight. I think that's a weakness I see in TSM, which wasn't as exploited, because even when he was picking Lucian, the enemy top was picking Lilia top as well, just counter griefing. So I think when he gets the Orin treatment, it's going to be a bit difficult. But I think their jungle has had good games. When I saw him on like Nidalee, he was really popping off. I think maybe Nidalee ban is necessary from TL.
They banned it in C9 banned it this series, so I assume it will stay.
Yeah, his Nidalee was really good. I think they can adopt from the bans, like, and I think they won't ban Caitlyn on blue side. Hopefully Team Liquid doesn't do this, and TSM will have to ban it as well on red side, because they had so many free bans on red side every time.
Yep.
But NA really likes red side for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's because blue side has to ban Caitlyn and NA is backwards, because everyone in the other regions like blue side, because then red side has to ban Caitlyn and you can target ban. So it just looks completely flipped to me. So hopefully Team Liquid gets a better grasp on the meta and says, you don't ban Caitlyn, I first pick Caitlyn, I win game, you ban Caitlyn. And then they change NA as a region and make it so blue side is OP again. But I think I favor TL a little bit, because I think Jensen and Impact are really good. I think Jensen's going to be really good against Bjergsen. So yeah, I think Liquid will win.
Are you worried at all about Broxah? Because this guy's champion pool really scares me as a jungler. I mean, when the enemy is first picking Graves and you're like R4 Volibear into Graves in like this type of game, I feel like that's just like the only thing you can play there. You know, like I don't know if Broxah, like we saw the Hecarim pick didn't look particularly good in either game. I mean, I would say it looked pretty bad. We didn't see anything like the Kindred come out. We didn't see any like Eve comps. Like they don't seem like Broxah champions anyway, even though Broxah is invisible for most of the game. So I think that he would gravitate towards the Eve. So so like, does this worry you at all?
For a second, it's all right.
Yeah,
I think two champs that Broxah was always good at were in the EU at least, were like Sejuani, Gragas, stuff like this, maybe even like Nocturne or something. And he was decent at Olaf too. I think, I mean, in the G2 Fnatic series, Gragas was picked because they had Lucian mid. I think if TL can just take like one book out of like LPL or EU and just see like, okay, Lucian, it's not a top laner. Yeah, Broken Blade, we're just going to put it mid. And it's put it mid and then pick like a Gragas, or I don't know, maybe Impact can play like, I don't know if he plays like Camille or something, maybe not. But you can maybe try Sejuani game. Otherwise, I think his champion pool is a problem, because he only plays like, what does he play? Like Lee Sin, Graves.
And Volibear. And Hecarim.
And Volibear doesn't really count anymore, I think.
And Hecarim sometimes.
Yeah.
Volibear's not really a champ. It's like, Volibear is like half a champ kind of right now. So I think, yeah, it's Lee Sin or Graves. So if he doesn't get them, I think Nidalee ban is good, because obviously Nidalee's really good against Graves. So maybe they can like first pick Graves or something and kind of salvage it somehow like that. But I think Gragas could be a good pick for him, honestly, and Karthus if they want to adopt something like the AD mid style, which is kind of fluctuating around Europe and Asia. Because he was always good at Karthus in Fnatic. He was always good at Gragas in Fnatic, and then he had Lee Sin and Elise as well, because Elise was kind of meta too. So he had like a semi-small champion pool with Sejuani, Elise, Lee Sin and stuff like this. But now obviously the meta is not very good for it. So he needs his mid laner to adapt, probably say like, you need to play Lucian so I can have a big champion.
Yeah, Lucian, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So maybe if they've adapted like this over the last week, then I think they'll be good. It'll be a good, interesting thing to see if they actually have adapt, or they're just going to go back to like, I pick Lee Sin, you pick Orianna, we go team fight. But if they adapt, I think he will be fine. So it all depends on that.
I'm just kind of scared.
What do you actually think, by the way, of Broxah generally as a jungler? Because obviously you played him when he was in LEC, and that was the time where, I mean, last year essentially is the one I'm thinking of the most, where everyone I had on my talk shows would basically, if not flame him, like if they weren't in his team, they'd just flame him and say he's like he's a bottom 4 jungler in LEC, he's overrated, he does nothing, he's just got all the good solo laners and players. But what's mad, dude, is even people like Youngbok, who was his coach at the time, they would just sort of like politely flame him by just like sort of, and Whipple, they would just sort of explain what he can't do and what he's brought. So they would kind of like do it in the way where you don't get in trouble, basically. What did you actually think? Like, do people go too harsh that way? Are you with them? Where's your angle? Where do you come down?
Well, the time that I played against him, he had Caps on his team, and it was a bit imbalanced, I think.
Okay.
He would always pick his AFK farm junglers like carts and stuff. I think he was always good at it. I mean, I guess the good things about Broxah was he was never really that far behind to a point where you'd say it's a jungle diff, but he was never really ahead to the point where you'd say it's a jungle diff either. He was just kind of stale.
It was
He didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, he didn't make that many plays, but he didn't make any grief plays either. So it's like he's in the middle of everything. He didn't grief it, but he didn't make huge leads. But he was always useful, I guess, is the strength of Broxah. He was always kind of useful. You could, if he has like a Lee Sin, basically Lee Sin, he could carry a team fight if he gets a good kick. So he was known for that as well. So those are the two positives about him. I think if you play against him actually as a player, like jungler versus jungler in like a team game on stage, you don't feel threatened. You're just like, okay, he's just gonna jungle, and I'm gonna try to do something. And if I can make something happen, he'll be behind.
Do you respect that as a player? Because I feel like you know.
How could any jungler respect that?
Yeah,
Dom?
exactly. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at here.
Put it this way: if the other jungler is on like an invade champion, and you're even just in solo queue, and he never invades you when you're on like the farming jungle, you just think like this guy's fucking shit. Obviously, don't you? Like you don't feel any danger whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think the respect kind of falls off when he has a lead, or like let's say he gets a double kill on my bot lane level 2 or something, and you're like, oh shit, and then the game is even for the next 50 minutes and he does nothing, then you lose respect for him. I can't say that I've been in a spot where he's been ahead of me and actually like not done nothing, so I can't say I've lost respect for him. But obviously his playstyle is really boring, and he's not trying to win the game, he's just trying not to lose the game, kind of. Because he probably thought like, I have caps, I have Soaz and Whippo, I have like Reckless, so do I need to win the game or do I just need to not lose the game? So I think that's where he kind of found his sort of playstyle maybe. Whereas I think on TL he has decent lanes as well, so he doesn't really need to like go for these aggressive plays. I think the only time that he's really aggressive is when he has like Elise. I think he's really good at Elise, like diving sides and getting these small advantages. But when it comes to like Gragas, Karthus, and Lee Sin, I feel like he's just playing to react rather than praying to be proactive.
Dude, that's fans in a nutshell for you. That they would be like, Caedrel, you're shit, unlike Broxah. And then you're like, let's have a look at my solo data. So I've got Smitty G in the top lane and Salfie in the mid lane, and he's playing with Prime, Soaz, and fucking Whippo and Caps. So yeah, this seems fair. Yeah, I'm just shit.
At the time it was I had. Oh yeah, it was no, it was that time. It was. Yeah. No, who was last year? He was on Fnatic last year, right?
Yeah, didn't you have Mickey?
Yeah, but you were talking about season 8 before when he had Caps though. Yeah. Last year was when he had Nemesis.
Oh yeah, that's when he had Nemesis. Yeah, cool.
And Nemesis, to be fair, I thought Nemesis was playing better compared to other mid laners.
In the summer,
last year Nemesis was good, I think.
Yep. All right.
Not bad.
All right.
By the way, does anyone here actually think TSM's winning that series?
I actually think they can. I think they can, just because TL is so like inactive that it's like anyone can beat TL. Like I'm so low on everyone in NA that it's like if any team wins, like I would just be like, yeah, I'll fucking take it, man. Just whatever. Like just stop the fucking torture already. Like I think the TSM can win off mid diff. Like I think they could win if Bjergsen like really pops off, because Bjergsen's been like hard 1v9.
Oh, he's been very good in the playoffs. Probably the best player. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say Bjergsen's probably been the best player in the playoffs. And then also like I think that Spico will be able to help mid more than Jensen will. So like if they pressure mid, I don't see TL really being able to answer it. I guess the thing for me is like the way I see it is I think that TSM is going to win topside. I think TL will hard win bot lane. I think CoreJJ is tactical.
That's why I personally think TL wins, mate, because I think it's support difference.
Yeah.
That's where I think the game changes, because think about it, right? Like we're saying, it's already hard enough to make like the top laner one of your main carries. So they're trying to do it like they did in that series against Cloud9 with Broken Blade. But even then, they had to do like some kind of weird drafts to make it work. And even then, it's not like they stomped the series. So Impact can definitely hold up in a normal meta game at top lane. Mid lane is pretty much a push. Like they're both really good players. Yeah, I'll give it to you. Briggs has played better in the playoffs. Jensen had the better regular split. Jungle, they're both kind of useless, but I'm with you. At least Spicker kind of does something. Broxah basically just waits for everyone else to win the game and then just goes like gets out of the fucking taxi and goes, yeah, great driving by me. I won the race again. It's like, you were in the back seat. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, but I told you to go. Like, give me a break. And then the bot lane, that's the problem. Listen, on paper, I agree. On paper, the bot lane should be fine, but that bot lane just hasn't been very good. Like, Doublelift's been really up and down, and he hasn't had many ups. It's more like he just had okay games and bad games.
Yeah, so, Tactical's a better player right now.
And dude, they literally subbed out their support mid-playoffs because it was going so badly. So that CoreJJ can just win this whole series himself, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the TL should probably go with the. I know it sounds like really cringe to have to do because you should be able to punish the Rakan, but it seems like TSM's bot lane is literally like Rakan one trick at this point. I think that they can just take like the easy mode and just ban out.
Let him take it.
Yeah, just I mean they could just let him take it, or they can just ban it and then force like them to play skill matchup bot lane. Like let's see some Bard versus Thresh or like something like that in bot lane. Put Biofrost on Nautilus, see if he runs down, gets 11 deaths again. I feel like TL can really do some things in draft to skew the bot lane. I'm like
Is there a reason? Is there a reason why no one in NA plays like Nautilus Leona? Everyone in the world is playing it. Everyone.
So people use Leona as a counter to Nautilus, and Nautilus is considered like super OP blind pickable. Well, in NA, like Nautilus just dies 150 times per game whenever it's picked. So you can't pick Nautilus blind. Like this champion is just completely like dead in our region. So because Nautilus is dead, then Leona becomes dead like as a result. Also, for some reason, we have this weird fucked up mentality where we think that Leona is not good into Rakan because like people are afraid of the unflinching rune and the resolve tree. They're like, no. Rakan just takes unflinching and the matchup isn't that good for Leona anymore. Where it's really like, okay, what happens if the Leona
That's
just like
reaching it? Yeah, come on.
Like, what if the Leona just one shots the AD carry in front of the Rakan and then your AD carry just flashes the Rakan W? Like, what happens if that happens? What happens if you just all in and the W gets flashed?
Also, why are we just picking these champions based on what they do in the 2v2 laning phase? You are aware the game isn't won in the fucking laning phase in season 10. Like, Leona's going to do loads of shit. Like, you can just lock someone down completely. Like, that's going to be awesome for certain teams.
Yeah.
I think when I see NA, they're blind picking. The two most blind picks I saw in NA was Rakan and Bard. I think these are the two biggest blind picks. When Thresh is down, I think Thresh is obviously really strong, and NA plays Thresh, of what I've seen. But these are the two blinds that people go for, and I feel like if you did this versus anyone in Europe or LPL, like blind Bard or blind Rakan, I think the Nautilus treatment will come out, and your bot lane have to stand at their nexus in the first 10 minutes of the game.
Yep.
This Bard will get hit by one hook, die, and then you'll wonder where your support is for the rest of the game because he's just completely stuck under his tower with his little chimes.
Yep.
And the game's over. So, yeah, I'm a bit worried about their bot lane meta right now.
Yeah, Nautilus is just not like picked here. I don't know what to tell you about that. It's just fucked up. But anyways, I guess that's enough on NA. We covered all the big matchups, and yeah, I mean, I think it's time to talk about Europe. Obviously, the big thing that happened was Fnatic finally beat G2 in a series. Like, I don't know when the last time that happened was. Probably since when Caps was on the team in 2018. So yeah, so. This is like actually huge for you. We had Schalke, obviously Miracle Run is dead. They lost to Mad Lions, and then Mad Lions actually lost to Rogue, which I think was surprising to some people because Rogue looked so bad against Fnatic in general. But I guess the most interesting matchup to start with is just that winner brackets finals, the Fnatic versus G2. I mean, how do you think that this ended up happening, Caedrel? Did you expect this at all, or did you think it was just going to be like a G2 3-0?
I thought it was going to be a G2 3-0. I think G2 kind of threw some of the games, but I think Fnatic really improved. I think even though they kind of adopted their style against Rogue, where they go 80 mid AP jungle, they also adopted like a hack room and stuff like this. So I think Selfmade was playing really, really well and really consistent.
He was smurfed the whole series, mate.
He was really smurfing. And I think that kind of consistency helped them. And I think the two biggest things which I saw from Fnatic, which kind of changed over the recent sort of last few weeks, well, I guess three big things. I think the first thing is Hylissang's been smurfing, like normally throughout the regular split, Hylissang's just running it and then like making these stupidly aggressive plays with no brain behind it, even though it looks like he's griefing. He's kind of in his head, he's not. And then in this series, he's like playing so well around like whether stopping bases, engaging, where to play on side of the map. I think another point was that they were so fast that like realizing G2 were making a play, and then they were so quick to decide whether we're going to match this play or we're going to cross map. Like there was games where G2 would like invade their top side, trying to get vision, and then you have to choose: do we stop them? And then they stopped them and kill 4 of them. But some teams would pussy out and go bot side and just try to cross map and stuff. So they were so good at just matching them on the right sides of the map. And I think Fnatic was also so good at just like right-clicking mid and just fighting and just like ulting on them and just getting some flash and stuff like this. So yeah, I think they improved a lot.
By the way, I even asked this on Twitter, and I'm not joking. I couldn't find anyone on the entire internet. I said, before this matchup, I said on Twitter, are there any coaches, players, or analysts who actually have Fnatic winning the series? I genuinely wanted to know, like, does someone have any secret scrim info, or does anyone have any way they've even like modeled the game that they could win? I'm not joking. Not a single person thought Fnatic was winning. In fact, like you're saying, people didn't just think G2 was winning, dude. People thought G2 was 3. Everyone thought they're 3-0 win. Like they're just going to stomp the whole thing. Because obviously the logic was, especially because no one knew what the meta shift and bringing Lucian in, everyone thought it's going to be fucking solo lane difference, isn't it? They're just going to get smashed in the solos. Like, how the fuck is Nemesis and Whipple, with the way they played in the regular split, they're not going to hold up to Wonder and Caps in playoff form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking a few pro players too, and they said G2 is gonna stomp. So I was like, okay.
I think it was a huge G2 like cited prediction, but I also think that there's like a world where G2 just easily 3-1s the series, right? Like whatever they lost one of the first two games.
Yeah, I'm not joking. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that they lost the actual series, like if they'd have won that last one, I was going to do a tweet like, "Wow, I've never seen a team win 4 games in a best of 5 before."
Yeah,
because, like,
exactly.
mate, they had that game won. Like, them and Misfits this season must secretly be best friends with Fnatic. Why are you just giving these motherfuckers free games where you're like a billion gold ahead and can't lose? It's like you're literally doing the solo queue shit of like, we never need to base. Let's just go and win the game. It's like, why don't you just go back and win the whole game?
Yeah, no, I thought it was really weird. Like the game 3 was probably one of the worst throws I've seen of G2.
Oh, it's crazy.
That was one of the things that I always thought was like really core to G2 and why they were so good is, you know, this team was characterized as not having necessarily the best early game, but when they got like going, they would almost always lose once they got to like mid to late game. Like, or like they would always win when they got to, they would almost never lose when they got to mid to late game, when they had carries ahead at all. Like if Caps was ahead, Perks was ahead, game's over. Like, they're just never gonna get out like macroed or have bad decisions. But it seems like that one decision just around the inhibitor to like take the inhibitor, then fight, everyone died, Baron is up, and they get outscaled. It was like the perfect storm. Like that was probably the worst decision they've ever made. Yeah, and they lost Ocean. Like it's really crazy. So
yeah, that's actually the crazy part about it, dude. That's one of those moments where, no joke, I'm surprised someone didn't think to do a video on that exact moment. What you should do is, some analysts, by the way, this is free content if you want it. If you're an analyst, what you do is you pause the game at the moment they're attacking that inhib, right? And what you say is, I'm going to do a cost-benefit analysis. Here's what we could get if we push for. Like, what are the chances we get the inhib and then we take the game? And then what you do is you say, what would happen, though, if we fucked it up and most of us died? And if the cost is they get the soul dragon, like that's you never did, like the cost analysis makes no sense there. Like even if you could win the game, your chances are so low. It's like basically the upside is tiny and the downside is enormous. In fact, the downside's almost death instantly, right?
Yep. Super high risk plays. G2 is known for them.
Yeah, I mean, from what a lot of
I feel like they were trying to style, dude. I think they genuinely thought
they got cocky for sure.
Yeah,
it was for sure a world record in their head trying to go for that one.
Yeah, because you're also trying to like crush them in like hilarious fashion because that's just kind of like G2's style, isn't it? By the way, I always say this about, because I used to say it in the past when people like Faker were super aggressive. It's also because there's an implied extra value in that, which is you just make people psychologically feel weaker against you. Because since you're not just beating them, but you're sort of like humiliating the guy, it's a way to win the next game sort of before it started. So it's not like you're doing it just stupidly. Because like famously, like an MMA example is, that's why like legendary striker Anderson Silva used to do all that shit where he'd like let you punch and he'd just dodge it. Because the premise is he didn't think that was the best defense, but he also wasn't an idiot. He was doing it because if he can do that, you're going to feel powerless, aren't you? If you can't even punch him, but he can hit you anytime you like, you're going to think you're going to shut down all your tools and start just playing defensively. So, like, I think G2 thought, like, as you said, Dom, like, they're going to win that game and then that's it. The series is theirs. They're going to stomp the rest. But literally, like, it ended up having the reverse psychological effect on them because then afterwards you just think, like, how the fuck did we lose that game? Because that's a game where, I'm sorry, I don't care what fan of a team you are. You can't look at that game and go, props to Fnatic, what a great comeback. It's like they didn't do anything. Yeah. Listen, when they did what they had to, but they didn't create a situation in which they won the game. The other team just took the weirdest risk ever, probably because they thought we can't. To be fair, I'll also throw in as well, it's an upper bracket match. You can't go out with the tournament now. You can still, in theory, win from the lower bracket. I don't think they were thinking that, but it does mean you don't have the same, like, do or die, you know? Like, I don't know if they do that in game 5 of, like, the single elim finals or something. I feel like you'd probably play safe in that scenario, you know, so I'll throw that in as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the G2 themselves, like, obviously played, like, overly cocky in that situation, but one of the things that I really like about the team in general is just like kind of their game 4 draft coming off of it. How many teams would lose a game like that where they throw massively and the enemy like Hecarim ends up being this huge issue and then giving it to them again in game 4 and then countering it with the Taric, like giving them the all-in comp and then picking Taric there. I feel like that actually takes a lot of mental resilience to not get like panicked, like, oh shit, like if they're winning from that position with Hecarim, then, you know, what happens if they actually play a good early game? We're going to get stomped. Like, I love seeing teams take those types of adaptations. It's one of the reasons why I like LEC so much more than LCS, because I feel like they're so much more willing to, like, be accurate about what happened in the game and then, like, responding to it. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Caedrel.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something I was saying on the desk as well. It's like G2, they threw this game, but you don't have to read into it. You know, it's not like they fucking outdrafted you, outplayed you or anything. You just completely griefed it. Like you were legit. It was 10 to 1 kills, 3 dragons up, 15 minutes in taking their inhib. So obviously the draft's working. It's not really the draft's fault. It's the gameplay. So it's just good that players are able to like. It's not like I don't know how to say it. It's like it's not a personal issue between them. It's not like, oh well, self-made carry on Hecarim. I don't even have Hecarim anymore. I don't even look good or anything. It's like, well, we were stomping you. We just fucked up. It's our bad. We'll just run it back. It's like fine. Whereas I think other maybe LCS, I'm not really sure if I can like speak on their behalf, but maybe they're like, oh well, that Hecarim was 10-0. We let him scale. Maybe we shouldn't have taken the in-hit. Maybe we were like the early game comp was working, but it's not really our style, whatever. And they're reading into it too much, and then they're overthinking, and then they start doubting each other, and then they start coming up with ridiculous plans, whatever. G2 probably just like, yeah, we stomped him. Let's just run it back. Our bad.
Even though I do agree with that as a general sentiment, I'm pretty sure the team thought that in the court. I'll tell you one person I don't think thought that, Caedrel, which is Caps. That's why he was like, you know what? Enough for Zir and fucking Oriana. Time for LeBlanc. Time for me to do Caps shit.
Yeah.
So, like, he was fucking
True.
popping off then.
Yeah.
I think the early game definitely came from the jungle support, but I think throwing in an early game mid as well doesn't hurt the comp too much. So it's like a good decision probably by him.
Yeah.
He's probably like Nemesis and me just farming. I won't allow it. Pick me LeBlanc.
So two things I wanted to talk about were like Caps' play overall in the series. Like I don't know if I just have Caps as like I hold him to such a ridiculous standard because I think he's the best player in EU, right? So when I saw that series, I actually thought he like underperformed a bit. I don't know how you guys felt about that. I was like, damn, this is like not Caps level gameplay. Like there was like some weird decisions he made. Like for example, in game 5 where he like tried to pick off the gangplank on the side, really and like the whole team essentially dies because of that. I thought that was like
that was also a throw, dude. He single-handedly threw that game when he did that.
Yep. So I think that Caps underperformed, and then Jankos, like I don't know how I feel about him in this meta champion pool wise, because it seems like everyone's playing like Eve, Hecarim, and EU. Like these are really big power picks. I mean, you saw Inspired adapt to that really quickly, and Jankos is still just kind of playing set every single game. So yeah, those are the two things that I wanted to bring up. Just Caps, like what's his level of play like? As good as he can play in the series, or like was this an acceptable level of play for him, considering like holding to the standard of being the best player in EU? And does Jankos actually have champion pool issues? Because we did see like 4 games of set.
I think the first point, or the second point about we'll start with Jankos. I think he does his job right. He just picks his early game jungle and he plays for his lanes, and I think he has got the best laners in Europe, arguably, in terms of not just the lane phase, but like winning with an advantage. Like Caps, if Caps is ahead, he's not gonna fuck up and grief into you. Maybe once every sort of 10 games, but most of the time he's gonna play really consistently good. Same sort of thing with Wunder. Wunder fits his job really well. He picks like tanks if he needs to and GP or whatever. And he's always got good blind tops, and the same with Perks. It feels like, barring this kind of method, but just in general, Perks, if he's ahead, he just plays team fights so well. So I guess G2 have just adopted a style where we don't want to play farming junglers, because then I can't play around my lanes as much. I can't push out waves. I can't help with dives. I can't help with covers. So I may as well pick an early game jungle and just sort of cover my lanes, get them ahead, make sure Caps is smurfing, and then we'll win the game like that. But I think Jankos is a good carry jungle player. I think he wouldn't struggle to pick up Hecarim and stuff like this. So maybe for the best of 5, it's something they want to pick up. Try sort of putting Caps on something less aggressive, like back to the Azir rather than the LeBlanc, and then just having him farm up, or even the Lucian or something like this. So I think G2 is known as a team that can adapt really easily. So if they want to pull it out, I'm sure they can pull it out in like 1 or 2 days of practice. But I think in general, Jankos' champion pool is just, it feels like he's needed on these champs to get them to the early game to make sure they're ahead. And then when G2's ahead, it's so hard to shut them down. But I think they made loads of mistakes in snowballing.
Okay.
And then in Caps in general, I think, yeah, it was a bit underwhelming. I think the LeBlanc performances were fine overall. I think he was playing scaling mages and he was doing team fights fine. I think his Orianna was pretty good. His Azir was not the greatest. I think the LeBlanc, it was a win and a loss, so it's like fine both sides. And then the Akali game, he was kind of quiet as well. I mean, the game was really tough because of the state of the game, but normally when you see Caps on Akali, he's just like 10-0, killing your whole backline 1 versus 3. So I think I agree with you. There is such a high expectation of Caps where it's like, okay, he's going to go 10-0 every game, carry the game single-handedly, bring everyone mid and have all the pressure. So it's like, some games it's not like that. I think his Akali is still fucking good, but I think maybe the game state wasn't good for him, or it was just a bad game in general, or he couldn't do much. So yeah, I mean, he got executed by Baron. So
here's the difference, though, Dom, is if you remember the series last year when they were playing those 2 series in the summer where they were both 5-game series, those were the ones where he actually legit was having real bad games. Like that was when he was doing the Caps craps thing, and most of the time it was fucking craps that turned up. Like he was just getting wrecked after. Like that was probably his worst set of series in the whole year. The difference now is, I kind of agree. Like his version of a bad game now is he just does a normal game, which actually is a massive improvement. By the way, it means that aside from that one LeBlanc move, he doesn't really throw the game generally. He just does okay or doesn't do that well on the champion. Whereas before he used to sometimes, as everyone knows, just hard feed the game because he was like over pushing on champions that didn't make sense or just having a bad game or whatever. And then the self-made thing. Sorry, and the Jankos thing. That's the reason I have a hard time doing that. Like, I'm interested in Caedrel's actually analysis there, where he says that he thinks the picks were specifically to help the rest of the team basically and get the comp online, because that's one thing I worried about in this matchup. Even though I thought Fnatic had no chance to win, the one area I would have had them having an advantage is actually jungle. Like, I actually do think, no matter what you think of Fnatic in the split, I thought Southbay was the best jungler. I think even comparable to Shadow, because like a lot of Shadow's best games were just popping off on Lee Sin. Like, mate, you can't just tell me the best jungler is always the one who has the Lee Sin highlights. It's just a boring fucking.
Yeah, I actually had a
narrative.
weird perception of best jungler this split. I don't know how Caedrel feels about it, but I thought that in terms of just regular season play only, I thought that the highest level of performance average over all the games was actually Inspired. I thought Inspired was...
Yeah, I think Inspired was the best for sure in the regular split.
Okay. I feel like he has a bit of a limited champion pool as well, though. That's my problem.
Yeah, he does.
That's kind of what I thought about it. I mean, like, what is it limited by? Because, I mean, right now, like, you saw...
Yeah, listen, it's basically the same argument about everything about Rogue, right? It's like, all they're doing is playing the meta perfectly and winning from it. It's like, is that a downside? It isn't now, but in the future it would be. So I guess I'm being unfair because I'm talking about, like, overall ability or whatever. You're right, though. You played all the champions that you had to.
Yeah, I thought Inspired
was
really good.
I think Inspired was really good in the regular split. I think he had one best of 5, which was really bad against Fnatic. Sorry, really against Fnatic, he has a really bad best of 5, but I think a week later he shows up, picks his Evelyn, and just starts stomping again. So I think Inspired was definitely the best performing jungler in terms of like champion pool consistency and getting ahead. But I think Selfmade, I wouldn't say it was the best jungler in the entire split, because I think Fnatic had a lot of ups and downs,
like,
and when
weird
Selfmade
games.
Set.
Like,
yeah, he'll pick set and go like 0-0-7.
Yeah, but like there was some games, like, so for example, the one versus G2 where he was playing like Lee Sin and just flashed into the turret, died like through the whole lane phase. Like, literally his lane 2v2 killed as Pyke Jhin into Caitlyn Morgana. Think about that lane matchup. How insanely hard is it for a Pyke Jhin to actually play into Kate Morgana? Wins that lane, and then he just comes and feeds double bust like nothing. It just pieces out. Like, that was pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, I think he had like really insane games where he carries alone, and then he had really bad games where he ran it in the regular split. But I think in the best of 5 versus G2, I think he was the better jungler for sure, and I think
agreed.
That's why he's so good, kind of.
That's
but I think in playoffs he's the best jungler.
Like, even though, listen, I think not only is he better to play at the moment, but he was way better in that series particularly. But that's the one area that actually I'm a little bit underwhelmed by Jankos this year. I've noticed, not only in terms of his play, but in all of his interviews now, dude, he like, I thought he was joking at first, but he's just doing that G2 thing where you mask like criticism in jokes. He always talks about how he's old and how he's not good and he's not young and he doesn't have the mechanics. And he's like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, last year you could still play all the shit like Lee Sin and be a fucking monster. What are you talking about? Like, I feel like he's got like a self-limiting belief where he thinks to himself like, oh, I'm now like I'm an older, but he's basically doing that shit where they all transition to become the brain jungler only and just set the team up. But like, listen, I know Selfmade is like a younger version of you, but like, obviously, Jankos still has the mechanics. He still looks really good to me when he has his good games. So, like, I feel like he's limiting himself in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something in his head. I mean, I can't really speak on it because I'm not really sure how he thinks about it. But I think in solo queue, I think Jankos is really good. I think in scrims when he plays carry junglers, when we scrim him, whatever, on Lee Sin, whatever, he seems really good. I mean, obviously, his stage performances on Lee Sin haven't been that good recently. I think he's been making a lot of mechanical mistakes on the champs itself. But I wouldn't attribute the set picks just because he feels like he's getting worse or whatever, or he doesn't have the mechanics. I think if he picks his, I mean, obviously the meta for Jankos is really good when it's like Elise, Volibear, Rek'Sai, stuff like this. This is where he really shines. But even like maybe Kha'Zix arguably, but I mean last year's meta in general with the Jarvan, the Elise, Olaf, that's kind of where I think Jankos is in his huge comfort zone. I don't think he's a huge like Hecarim sort of Evelyn 1v9 player. But I wouldn't say that it's impossible for him to pick it up. I just think it's not really his style.
Yeah.
Whereas like junglers, younger junglers like Inspired and Selfmade who are like solo queue fucking warlords, just stomping around solo queue, and then they just pick these champs and carry. So yeah.
Well, what do you think about just the general perception of like just playing a lot of carry junglers, like the general idea of like, hey, you should be playing carry junglers? Because even like, so for example, G2 kind of reminds me of like Top in China, where like Karsa is like Jankos in the way where he can play the mechanical champions. I mean, I know people will meme Jankos' Lee Sin now, but for the most part, the guy's been good on the champion for a while. Of
course.
And Karsa for top has like all these insane laners, right? Knight, Jackie Love, 369, like all these top level players. But even that team is picking up like Nidalee and stuff like that and playing around jungle. So if that team is able to like, if that team is saying, hey, carry junglers are the meta, and even when they played against JDG in the finals, we actually watched that series together, they're playing a bunch of carry junglers themselves. If that team is willing to do that, why is G2 not doing it?
It's a good question. I would argue that they're probably gonna try it next week a little bit. I don't know, just Nidalee. Europe never really liked Nidalee. I don't think there's even like big Nidalee players in Europe at all. I don't think Jankos has played Nidalee for like 3 or 4 seasons at least, probably as well. So the whole Nidalee thing is something that I've been questioning in general. Like, why isn't Europe playing Nidalee? Like, they're fine playing AD mids and playing like Lilia, Evelyn, Gragas even at times with self-made, but Nidalee's just never picked. And I guess the only reason that I can attribute it to is I think Nidalee needs mega good setup. I think it needs Renekton top, it needs like a Camille, it needs a set mid, it needs something like this with CC, early prio, and dive potential. Because I think this champ's kind of like Elise in a way where you can dive, but it's also like Evelyn in a way where you can farm. And I think it scales really well as well. So I think you need really good players, whether it's like an Ornn top or Renekton or something like this. And I think you need really specific champion pools to be able to pull the Nidalee off, because it's a bit different to like Evelyn, where Evelyn can just solo kill someone level 6. Nidalee needs setup. She can't just like max range hit a spear in a lane and kill him himself. So I would attribute it more to setup. I don't think there's huge Renekton players in Europe. Like I think LCK and LPL really like to pick Renekton, Camille top and stuff like this, whereas EU kind of likes to play like GP and Jace, Gnar, stuff like this. Even Shen sometimes as well. So that's the only reason I can attribute it to. As on top of the fact that Europe doesn't really play Nidalee as much, on top of the fact that the solo laners don't play that much setup, I think that's the reason I would attribute Nidalee.
Since in the recent match where the Shy was like finally playing like fucking Ornn and stuff like that in LPL, right? Everyone was commenting on the fact that like, did you see this, Dom, on Reddit where there was like someone had found a story where when fucking the Shy, no joke, when the Shy was literally like at Worlds that he won, when he was there, his coach told him, all he said was, do not pick Fiora. In this, the World Championship, Caedrel, the Shy locks it in. And so then the next game, that's why he was benched for Duke. Like, no joke. Like, this is the guy who won Worlds after that. Like, because the problem with that, right, is what I love about that story is it just shows why there are exceptions to all rules. Because obviously, normally what you'd tell like a young player is like, listen, the best player in the world, you know, would do the right pick and the correct one and do what his coach wants, you know. But like, that is generally true. But the problem is if you're sort of like a genius like the Shy, you actually can just get away with outrageous shit like that. I can't even believe it still, because he's clearly done it like after that as well. Like I've seen a bunch of drafts that like didn't make sense with his pick, and it's like if you know the fact that he basically doesn't speak Chinese. I mean, at the time he had a Korean coach, to be fair, but like this guy just seems like he just doesn't give a fuck. I mean, it's alpha in a way because you can still win some of those games, but holy shit, that's such a bad message to like send to younger players as well. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's a genius more or he's just a griefer, because now after I saw that Kennen game where he's building rapid fire cannon, Bork, and he's looking for like an IE afterwards or something like that. Now I just feel like, oh man, this guy is really just like he just doesn't give a fuck anymore.
Listen, here's the problem that all Chinese players have. They play 1 billion games, dude. I think in the regular split, Knight played 37 champions. As in like total picks, like, obviously not like out of the 100. I mean, like as in picks. Like he had 37 games, guys. So if you play 37 games, you're gonna have some real screamers in there. Come on, like especially if you're like the Shy. Where remember, I always say it, the Shy's like Hooney thinks he actually is in the game, but he actually is like that. Like this guy his whole mission is like, I'm either gonna run over you or run into the brick wall and just die. Like that's like his whole fucking game. So I agree. He definitely had a couple of bad games, but yeah, generally he was pretty good this split. Actually, he like sort of got his shit together again.
It's weird because like even when he's playing well, he just dies so much, and that's like one of the things where like the Shy. So I think he had most deaths in the split over anyone. Like most total deaths.
Though, dude. This is why you know he's a solo queue god though, because he's doing that stupid ass logic where you know what the solo queue top laners go like. Actually, I died tactically there, so that then he's like slightly lower in health when I come back, and then I kill him. It's like, all right, mate. You know, like I don't play tops. I'm just going to trust that you know what the fuck you're talking about, and just I'll just do my shit. Like he's doing that thing. That's nailed it. These guys, they're doing the solo queue shit, but in real life games like the World Championship. I love it. I love it.
I think the Shy is a fake pressure genius. He makes you think that his jungler's coming, and like hard trades when his jungler, like he's trading on you when your jungler's coming, but he makes you think and question, wait, is their jungler coming too? Because he's playing like such a maniac. Like I think he's a fake pressure genius, and after a year or two, people have sort of downloaded his brain and said like, okay, yeah, this guy's fake pressuring so hard, just kill him again.
Wait, is that fake pressuring or is that just inting? Like where does it become into?
I agree with him. No, the whole point he's making there is
it's all fake pressuring is all about getting in their head.
Yeah, but still,
basically the positive side is it can have that psychological effect. The downside is you are just covering the fact that you don't ever want to back off. You always want to play as though you do every jump. The best example ever of this, because every fucking fan and analyst got drawn in by this bullshit and then got absolutely wrecked for the next few years, is Marin. So every dumbass motherfucker gave this guy the MVP for Worlds. They gave him the MVP when, by the way, in the same tournament, Faker just played a champion no one else played perfectly and won like every game on it. But let's just ignore that. Instead, stupid-ass Marin played all his champions, permanently is up in lane all the time, but it makes all the other players think, because Bengi never goes fucking mid, oh, Bengi must be there the whole time. Fuck, Bengi's there, Bengi's there. So it makes him have like free chance to always have push in lane. Here's why I know it was fake, though. Because the next years, he wasn't on SK Telecom. First, he was on that team. I think it was a Freak of Freaks. Then he went to China. And by the way, spoiler, he kept doing it even then. And when he was on those teams that weren't good teams, it just meant he would either carry the game when you didn't attack him, or if you went to top lane, he just fed. So he would straight up throw entire games. And the worst thing was, because everyone told this guy he was a genius, he was a world champion and MVP, he thought he was playing like, this is just how I play the game. It's like, what are you talking about, motherfucker? Like, you are aware you can just do it like half the time or so. You don't have to, we're not saying don't ever do it, but don't do it every game. Like, that's why it's fake pressure. Obviously, someone's going to figure out eventually. His jungler can't be there every time, and then you're fucked, aren't you? Because then they're going to exploit it.
Yeah, that's something big in Europe, fake pressure. I think it's like, even when we're screaming, I can hear my AD carry Patrick saying, is this guy a fake pressure genius, or why is he staying for this wave? Like people just do these things where they walk up on a wave when their jungler's bot side. Like if I'm AD carry, my jungler's bot side, and I step up and start hitting the AD carry, it's like, he makes you question, like, is his jungler actually bot side, or is he just playing super cocky? And then it just gets to the point where it just becomes like a mental game. Like, if you're playing like Nautilus versus Leona matchup, and they're trading on you really hard with the Leona or something, making you think that their jungler's there, and he's actually not, and you actually re-engage and you kill them both, but you're not sure if he's there, so you're like, wait, is there jungler in the bush? Then you're like, okay, we won't fight. And then actually 3 seconds later, they back off, they get the wave in, and now your top laner is getting dove, and you're like, what the fuck? So I think some teams are really good at doing the fake pressure, and then I think the Shy just takes it to the next level on his own.
Yeah, okay. So since we're talking about fake pressure geniuses, let's talk about a couple other fake pressure geniuses. We see them.
Where are we going to now? Where are we going here?
I mean, we could go Webbo, but I was actually.
Who are you thinking of?
Well, I was just gonna say Finn and Arome, because these guys are considered the weak side top laners, right? These are the weak side top laners. They battled
mind, as we were talking about, Rogue actually looked fucking good in the latter series. Where the fuck was he in that Fnatic series, Finn? That guy got exposed.
I think Finn on tanks is actually good, but on carries, I mean, he's the only top laner in Europe, I think, in like the playoffs, barring Arome, who plays like Renekton actively. So you could argue Inspired could play Nidalee or whatever. But I think that Finn on GP Renekton versus Finn on Orange Sion is like a whole new world. Like, hit against Fnatic, against Bwipo, he was playing GP in Renekton and having to flash away every lane and getting solo killed. And then against against Arome with his tanks, he was making him flash away and solo killing him with tanks. So it's like, please, Finn, don't pick carries. Let Inspired carry. He's really fucking good at Evelyn. He's really fucking good at Hecarim. Just let Inspired do the work. You pick your tank. Game's gonna win.
The problem is though, mate, he's a fucking Mimbo, isn't he? There's nothing going on up there. He's just a fucking good-looking guy. He's just go 3-0. I'm sweet. Like, no one gives a fuck, mate. Just play a tank and shut up.
Yeah, they were playing like Inspired on tanks. I mean, Finn on carries didn't look good. Now swap it so much better, I think.
Yeah. There you go. So the thing that I was wondering was, I'm pretty sure that Mad Lions did end up banning GP in that series versus Finn.
That's troll.
Good choice.
Good choice.
So
I love that, by the way.
It helped Rogue, I think.
It's always my favorite thing when people just give away free bans. Or even better than a free ban is where you ban some shit that actually my player's bad on, so I can't actually fuck up and pick him that now. That's the best ban of all.
But I will say, in the regular split, Finn's Renekton and GP looked really good. I think that's something I have to say. Like, in the regular split, he looked really good on these champs, but just in the playoffs games, it didn't look good. So the fact they banned it, I think it helped them, especially with the meta shift for jungle carries. I think it's just they took the right path, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was just so weird seeing that like a player underperforms hard on a pick and then you ban it the next series. Like, how much respect do you have to have for him? And then the other thing that was so weird is I feel like Mad Lions forgot who Arome was in this series. Like, they're like, okay, Arome's gonna play carries every fucking game, and it's like, wait,
I wanted to make a point, dude. I think that I'm not joking. You know, every show we had, Peter Dawn, they all kept saying all the time, Arome carry play, because apparently he was like in the national leagues or whatever the fuck, right? Except for the fact that like when he had freeze and then they played around bot, right? So the logic was he's secretly a carry player who learned to play a tank side, which is like, no, you've misphrased that there. He was a carry player at the piss tier elo, and now he's a good tank player at the top of LEC. Can you see how those are two different things? It's like when people tell me like that some champion, like it's like Broxah, they'll be like, in solo queue though, he's playing like Rengar. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, what about in the actual games, you daft cunt? Like, no one cares about some solo queue game. Yeah. You're on your fucking malice shit when you're doing that. So like, people do that retarded like analysis where they just use solo queues if it was real life. So in this scenario, right, I genuinely think, because of how bad Finn was in that last series, and the fact that everyone thought Rogue's just going out, and these motherfuckers are going to Worlds after tanking 2 best-of-5s, and we're all just going to be ashamed. Like, why are we sending these cunts? So the best thing is, I think they thought, like, you know what, Romy, it's your chance to shine, mate. You take the chance. You know, step up to the plate, boy. Your time to swing for the fences. And then he was whiffing. He's just striking a miss, swinging a miss, just getting wrecked, wasn't he?
Yeah, I just thought it's super, super weird there. And then also, like, Mad Lions, I feel like they forgot who they were at a point. Like, when I see Mad Lions play, like, finally in the Schalke series, we were seeing some of their picks. But this team won so many games in the regular season picking, like, Lee Sin and Orianna, like, every fucking game. They didn't care what they were against. They didn't care about counter picks. Other people were picking Volibear. They're still playing Lee Sin, right? People were picking Set. They're still picking Lee Sin. And then at some point, they just changed it. They're like, no. We can actually play everything in the jungle. Like, so then they started picking Set and all these random picks. And they're no longer playing the Orianna. So I just don't know what happened with Mad Lions.
Shadow on Set, by the way, is that's a
it's a nightmare.
Well. There's another one there. Why are you doing that? Whoever the fuck the coach is, what are you doing? Listen, Mac.
It looked so grief.
Yeah, it looked so bad. A war crime. That is true. But I mean, in general, it seems like the team just lost their identity at a point. Like, I don't know why this team changed up. Do you have any opinions on why they decided to change up? Do you think it's just a thing, Caedrel, where they're like, hey, we want to show that we're versatile in all styles? Or they're like, oh, if we can only play one style, we're going to get exploited later on, so we have to, like, adapt to other things? Like, why do you think they took this direction?
I don't know. I think the meta shift, I've said it a few times, I think it's just affected so many teams. I think it affected teams in positive ways, like Rogue and Fnatic, and it affected teams in negative ways, like Mad Lions, for example. Like, Shadow is not a huge carry player. Barring his Lee Sin and Hecarim, that's kind of it,
his
to be honest.
Looks pretty good.
And I guess Lily as well. I mean, the whole split, he's playing Volibear, Trundle, he's playing Lee Sin, that's kind of it. And then Set became meta, and he was never really good at it. He played it in scrims a few times or whatever, but you can see it by stage game, his mechanics just aren't there on the champ. So he's kind of limited to Lee Sin, Lilia, Hecarim right now in this carry jungle meta, unless he can pick up like Evelynn and stuff like this. So I just think that his champ pool was pretty bad. I think that he tried to play the Graves, he tried to play Set, didn't look that good, looked pretty terrible.
Nidalee
and then his top laner, his Nidalee as well, also not that good. And then you look at his top laner, he's playing Renekton, GP, Camille, and stuff like this, where I think in Rogue kind of figured out, okay, just tanks and carry jungle is better. They're trying to do carry top, carry jungle, and then they're leaving their mid laner who just kind of got target banned throughout the whole series. Humanoid had like no Akali throughout the whole series, and he didn't really pick Orianna either, so he was kind of out of it as well. And then their bot lane was also really good. Like Karsi was like really good at Kalista and stuff like this, and Kai'Sa, and now it's like an Ashe Senna meta, so he can't carry. So it's like all kind of fell apart for them. They didn't really find a way out.
Whoever gets the Senna wins. That is the way the game goes right now. Feels like it.
Kinda, yeah, but it's weird because in LPL whoever gets the Ashe wins, so it's like what?
but LEC they just can't like play Ashe to the same level. I mean, I think that they're getting better at it for sure, but I think there's this weird perception of what Ashe does in Europe where like they don't really understand the pick that well. They're just like, oh well.
They act like it's the old Ashe or something, dude. Like they don't seem to realize. Like look at that Perks game as Kyton was sick. Like they act like it's the old one. It's just a pure utility champ. It definitely isn't.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that the champion is still like really viable. I think that part of it is maybe like their willingness to go different builds. Like I feel like when you watch LPL, like they're very intelligent about when they're going to Essence River, when they're going Bork, and it seems like people are kind of just like stuck in one line of reasoning. At least for like Ashe, they're like, okay, this is just a Bork champion now, and then like other champions outscale it. I just feel like there needs to be more thought behind the pick, and like the champion just should be doing better than it is. But yeah, I mean, I guess where we could go from here is just the next series where it's going to be Rogue versus G2. I mean, Rogue historically does terrible into G2, similarly to how Fnatic.
Actually, I have a question. Before we get into this, I have a question for both of you, actually, which is when you say that, like, why did sort of the draft just fall apart? Because if you think about it, right, before Mad Lions fell from the #1 spot, when everyone thought they were the best team in the West, the whole thing everyone was praising them for is that they actually made good on all the pre-split hype that they were going to change their playing style. Like, suddenly they could play around a bunch of the lanes, they could play all these different picks. They didn't just only have to play the one style they used in spring. So everyone was praising them, right? I wonder, because the playoffs now is so much more expansive than back in the day. Like back in the day, you used to play single limb. So like, for example, unless you go to the finals, you only play 1 or 2 series and you might just be out immediately. Or if you play, if you get a top seed, you maybe only play the semis if you lose. So if you're like an inexperienced team, you might just be tempted to just stick with your fundamentals. Whatever got you there, you might just go with. Since you play so many series over so many weeks, you have all this practice time, it becomes like half a split. So as a result, unfortunately, I personally think teams are mad over. I would speculate, it's pure speculation, that teams just mad overreact to the scrims they get between the practice games. And if in some of those scrims the old picks don't work, they just go away from it. Whereas, like, generally, I'm not a fan of that overall because, first of all, you're not scrimming the team you're going to play. Like, in my opinion, picks shouldn't just be about how good are you right now on this champion. It should be like, what is the function of this champion and what would we use it for? That's how you're supposed to be conceiving it. So I think some of them just made some like really weird choices over the last few weeks. Like, it seemed like they just changed their own mind on who they are.
Yeah. You can go for it first, Caedrel.
Yeah, it's a
You
complicated
played in the
topic.
playoffs for like a week once in your career, so come on, what are you?
It's a
What was it like for you, Max?
You're such a tosser. Okay, I think it's a complicated thing. Just when a meta shift comes in, it's like you leave everything open and you're trying to like poke and prod at what works best for you versus what's changed in the meta. So it's really hard to figure it out because you have like one half of the league who's screaming one half and then the other half screaming the other half, kind of in playoffs, I imagine. Because if you look at Rogue, they came into the series thinking nothing changed, and Fnatic came into the series thinking everything changed. So obviously that whole week of scrims was like a middle parting where half the league thought in the playoffs was good to go normal, half the league thought everything could change. So you just have to kind of find the middle ground, and it's all about your scrim partners really. And if they pick something like, I'm sure if Rogue scrimmed Fnatic and they were against G2 instead on the weekend, and Fnatic was playing Lucian and Evelyn, then 2 days into scrims, Rogue would be like, okay, this shit looks fucking broken. We're gonna try it as well. So it all comes down to what works for you versus what works for the enemy team in every scrim block, and then can you adopt what's working for them and you into one sort of thing in together where you put it into something that works for you in general. So you like take picks which are working, like maybe you're playing Evelyn, but you're playing like a terrible top champ like GP as well. So the Evelyn was working, let's cut out the GP, but for them Ornn was working, so let's implement Ornn into our drafts. And like you just try to have to figure out the puzzle of the meta kind of, and playing against teams that are trying to figure out as well kind of helps you. But then there's times where you could come into a series where you try all these things out and it looks like it's going to work, and then you just get completely stumped by the old comps. So it's kind of a double-edged sword as to whether it'll work on competitive games. And then if it does, then it becomes the meta kind of, and then you start to adopt it even more. And if it doesn't, then you lose the best 5, or you lose the game 1 or the game 2, and you adopt back to what you're good at. So it's not like you're losing anything by trying new things, because if you're playing like Rogue the same thing throughout the whole split, you can always default back to your own style.
Sure.
Just making sure you have that innovation is the most important, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, what I would say on the topic is it feels like it really just depends on what happens to you in the stage games. Like, because we have double elimination now, you can go in with like whatever like headstrong mentality you have, and you can kind of like go through that for the first series. And then as soon as you like win or lose that series, I feel like that's really going to define what you're going to play from then on out. So like I think that Rogue is going to be very similar to how we saw them in the Mad Lion series going forward into G2. They're going to be playing the same type of picks. Like I don't think they're going to be going back to the GP, even though the GP was banned before. I feel like they kind of have their identity set where it's like, all right, we are a Hecarim Eve, like we are Fnatic light in terms of like drafting. You know, we're just going to play that type of series because they feel like everything's on the line. Also, I just feel like because Fnatic beat G2, that gives more confidence to Rogue as like since they're drafting similarly as to like their chances to beat G2. And yeah, like what picks that they could utilize to do that. And I think that just leads into the next topic, which is Rogue versus G2, which is our next series that we're going to see. Winner of this ends up in finals. Most people obviously are writing off Rogue similarly to how everyone wrote off Fnatic because G2 just always beats Rogue, it seems. Do you think there's any chance, Caedrel, of Rogue actually upsetting G2 here and making it to finals?
Well, I don't think Rogue have ever beat G2 this year, as far as I can remember. But it was the same. Yeah, it was the same story for Fnatic. Fnatic was 0-7 going into the series, so I don't know if that's something to go off. But I don't know if they have mental edge or anything G2. But I think the biggest factors are. I think there's 2 arguments for both sides, right? G2 lost to Fnatic, so they have to win now. So they're in full tryhard mode. So you can argue that G2 is going to try their absolute best against Rogue. Then you have Rogue, who's like found a really good style for them, and they're looking super good as well. So it's hard to say. I mean, just based on historically, I would say G2 will probably win the series because of how good they are. Backs against the wall, best of 5s. It's basically their comfort zone. But Rogue are looking good. I think their mid jungle is really strong. I think their AD carry is fitting pretty well into the meta, kind of, with like the Senna and stuff, like the supportive style. And their top laner's found his form with like more tanks orientated. So I think Rogue is looking super strong. I just don't think it's strong enough for like peak performance. G2 backs against the wall have to win best of 5 comfort zone. So yeah, that's my take.
I'll give you an angle for both teams, because here's the weird thing. I actually think the mid matchup is super interesting because on the one hand, as like Caedrel said, after losing to Fnatic, Larson just himself just took the fucking Lucian. He was like, "Oh, that works. So you made this. Now I made it." It was like that fucking meme, wasn't it? So if he does that, it'll be a really interesting series. Like if he goes wild with the picks, it could go all over the place. But if it isn't, it's just the traditional like Roma versus the fucking farmer, isn't it? So I actually wonder how that would work. Like traditionally, Caps isn't the player, unfortunately, that usually works out for the farmer with, because he just goes around the map and kills everyone, doesn't he? You're just fucking stood there, just farming with a zero or something. So it's not going to be great. So I really want to see what the picks are in mid. Like if they again, like I don't think this is a series, not just because of the last one, where they're going to be going Oriana at zero fucking Caps all the time. Surely you don't, because that's already what Larson's going to pick as it is. So there's one angle I think's interesting, because even though I actually thought Larson was the other best mid in Europe, certainly like you can see why the edge in the playoffs would go Caps' way. And then for top lane, listen, Wunder wasn't great in the Fnatic series. Definitely had some problems, but Wunder could just win this whole series himself. Come on, he could just smash this if he wants. Mm-hmm. So I need to know what form he's in, basically.
Yeah, I have confidence that Wunder will absolutely destroy Finn. Also, Wunder is like always good when it matters. Like, so I have so much confidence in Wunder as a player to like show up, and even in the series, like. In the series versus Fnatic, I didn't think that Wunder was specifically bad or anything, and even in like game one,
he just didn't carry though. You know, people think Whipple's such an inter. They expected him to just smash the series, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he was carrying games. Like the first game where they lost, I feel like that if the team played better, like individually, if the other side of the map was stable, he would have carried that whole game alone, because he solo killed Whippo as Gnar versus Rengar. Which number one, if the Rengar is losing lane to a Gnar, the Gnar is going to absolutely destroy him in team fights. And then, like, he was also able to, like, force out TP, get a TP advantage, TP bot, and get a kill bot lane. So I really felt like he was in position to carry that whole game if everything was, like, a little bit more reasonable going forward. But I guess the thing that the only way I can see G2 losing would be if Inspired just hard jungle diffs Jankos, like, carries the entire game, like, picks these.
I agree.
Picks these, like, Eve picks, these Hecarim picks, it just really, really pops off. And yeah, like, I guess what I'd ask Caedrel is, like, do you think that this is actually possible? Do you think that Jankos will get outmatched by Inspired in the series?
Possibly. I think Inspired is definitely better in the meta for sure. I think what Rogue has got going for them into the G2 Rogue series is, like, I think Rogue's mid jungle is really strong. I think Larson Caps is really even. I think Inspired has the edge over Jankos probably as well. So I think that's where their strengths are. I think obviously they have weaknesses when it comes to Wunder versus Finn. I think Wunder is obviously better. I think he's really strong. But I think Inspired will be pretty important in the series, I'd say. I think if he can get like Evelyn, Hecarim and stuff like this and actually carry the games, then I think G2 has a problem. They probably need to start banning out carry junglers more and start picking blue side, banning out even 2-3 junglers if they have to. But I think Larson is also a big threat. So I think mid jungle is a big threat for Rogue going into series. I think the side lanes aren't as big as a threat. I wouldn't say that they're either like super losing either. I think like Hans Vander versus Perks Mickey is obviously favorites for G2, but I think that they're obviously still a good bot lane. So it all comes down to mid jungle for me, but I still think G2 is favorite. But yeah.
Here's the problem. Are you ready for some speculation? Pure speculation here. I'm just doing this off narratives I've made in my own mind. So I changed the habit of a lifetime. Right? I actually think in this series, here's my call. I think Inspired chokes in this series. Because here's the thing. Unlike Self-Made, I actually think Inspired's one of those players who looks up to Jankos. Like, that's like his fucking hero in the Polish jungler hierarchy. That guy's a legend. So in that scenario, like, I've already seen Inspired in the past, last year, have some really dodgy playoff games where it looks like pressure got to him. So if you're Jankos, just go on autopilot, mate. Just play smooth. You don't have to do anything crazy. Just let the other guy feed, basically. Whereas I know people are going to think already, but wait a minute, why wouldn't Self-Made do that? Are you aware of the personalities of these people? Self-Made was a fucking L9 player. This guy, motherfucker's toxic. He probably never thinks he lost a game ever. Probably always the mid laner, wasn't it? Like, so why would he be worried if he was in a bad team losing? So perfect player to think they can win no matter what. So there we go. There's my call. There's the call.
Makes sense.
Not really a call century, just a call, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Caedrel, one last question. You think that Lucian ends up being banned by G2 in the series? You think that they ban Lucian versus Larson? Because Larson did pull it out. He looked pretty good on it when he did play it. Obviously, it enables the Eve a lot more. It doesn't really seem like a Caps champion to me. I mean, I feel like Caps can play anything, but I just don't feel like he would prefer to play something like the Lucian, generally speaking. Like, do you think that G2 just bans it throughout the whole series?
I think game one they should leave it open. I mean, it's all up to Caps if he can counter it. I mean, I don't know.
Can you counter Lucian mid?
I don't know. Maybe they try something like
no one counting solo queue?
There's no like hard counter to Lucian. There's like nothing really hard wins. I mean, there's champs that win after 6, like maybe Irelia and stuff like this, or I don't know. There's nothing that really stomps him. Maybe a Kali if she can get to the lane phase, or LeBlanc if she has a good jungler. But I think in general, I think it's better to leave it open for the first game, see what you can do. I mean, I think Caps is probably going to have that discussion with Grabs. Like, so we leave the illusion open. What do you think we should play? And maybe he has some things that he can try. Like, I don't know, like any Irelia mid. Maybe it could work against Lucian if you can get to the early few phases. Maybe even like a Yasuo could work into Lucian. But I think they'll leave it open for game 1 if Caps has a counter. If they ban it game 1, it means Caps obviously has said like, yeah, there's nothing counters this champ. I mean, it is really broken right now, so I wouldn't blame him for saying it either. And it does fit their whole champion pool and it unlocks the jungle and stuff like this. So it would be a good gun, just not for the lane phase. But if Caps says that like, oh, we can just play Irelia Sejuani into it and just stomp him or something like this, then they will definitely try it game 1. Doesn't work, ban Lucian, but I think they could try it.
By the way, I've got one last like mini topic that we could do because I noticed no one else commented on this except me. Like I've seen the only person who saw it. So Sam Matthews, who if you don't know is the owner of Fnatic and founded the team back in like 2004, did the maddest tweet I think I've ever seen in LEC history. Where this guy before this upper bracket match, where remember his team, like bear in mind, once they beat Rogue, I know no one thought they were going to beat G2. You're supposed to believe, right? Anything's possible again. Hey, it's our rivals. We're supposed to be as good as them. We can beat them, you know. Like in that scenario, you would think his tweet would be something like, come on, boys, this is our time to turn the rivalry around. We're going to win it. Dude, he did this insane tweet, which I haven't got pulled up, so I can't read it word for word. But the gist of it was basically like, it was like the loser dad who's just like, it's all right, kids, you tried. You can just, you know, if you lose, I'll still love you. So don't worry. Like, so just go out there and whatever, you know, you'll have fun. Like, dude, this is right before the game. Like, I know no one's reading it. It's not like his players are like looking at it like, well, he doesn't believe in us. Like, no, like it's not like it's in fact. But I can't believe an owner would do that, especially because it actually ended up making it look really stupid that they then won the series. Like, mate, you have been losing the psychological banter war to G2 for almost 2 years now. This was the one time where if you'd bantered them, like you always try to, where you just do a shit version of their banter, well, you would have won. You would have. That would have been that would have been like you're buying the stock low, and then you would have had it super high. Then you could have been like, see, Carlos. So instead, this motherfucker, the one time he won, already gave up the psychological advantage before. So afterwards, you can't be like, believed in him all along. You didn't. You didn't tweet. You dumb fuck. Like it was so bizarre. I haven't seen anything like that in ages, but it's so weird as a tweet.
Yeah, no.
Did you see the tweet, Tom?
I didn't see the tweet, but I just feel like no matter what they tweet,
I didn't delete it, right, mate.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I'll let me
find it. I'll see if I can read it. Like, word for word.
He literally just says like, going into this best of 5, we have nothing to lose. Like if we lose, then prop the G2. Like we're just gonna try our best or something like this.
Wait, this is actually
dude, unless you literally came from the future and know you've lost, don't do that tweet. That is so mad. The idea that first of all we have nothing to lose. The upper bracket life, dumb fuck, like all the respect, chance to ever talk. Like, there's a million things you have to learn. What a weird thing to say. What do you think, Dom?
I mean, I just feel like, you know, you could tweet out anything and it wouldn't change what Selfmade thinks. I feel like Selfmade is the most important player for somebody like Fnatic because this guy just doesn't give a fuck about anyone. Like, you can tell, like, the reason why I agreed with what you were saying earlier with the inspired versus Jankos thing and, like, how he was looking up to him was just that, like, Selfmade is the type of player where I know that he just thinks that, like, he was winning, he was watching Jankos win all those championships and he was like, yeah, like, I'm better than this. Like, this guy is
exactly. He was like, coach, put me in the game. Yeah, he's like, his own name. It's real. He's a self-made man. He just thinks like, I'm the shit. Like, but he is. That's why I can't even hate on him. He is.
Yeah, he is the shit. I respect him a lot. So I mean, honestly, I just feel like this Fnatic team is pretty mentally strong. Like, in terms of players, like the only person that I would think would be like a little bit on the fragile side would be Reckless. But besides for that, I feel like the rest of the team, you know, is completely fine just playing their best. So I mean, I definitely like the idea of adding Selfmade to this roster in general. I think it was the best pickup they could have made because it really just gave them that like edge where it's like, oh, now Fnatic have that like spice where you feel like they could win. I mean, compare Selfmade to somebody like Broxah and what they would say after the game. Like Broxah tweets out the most generic things ever. Ever. It's like
he's a robot, mate. He's not a real person. I can tell. He's just a robot.
We've got a game coming up next week in the lower bracket that decides whether we are going to win or lose. So we're going to train hard this week and try our best to get to the final. It's like
if it doesn't work out for Broxah in League of Legends, he is going to be Employee of the Month every month at Burger King because he's the guy who always has a smile and says like, "Would you like fries with that? Thank you, sir. Like enjoy it." You spilt it? I'll bring another one right over. Like, fucking this guy, he'll be mopping all the tables. He'll just be a perfect employee. But I agree, he has no fucking swagger, does he? He has anti-swagger, in fact. Like, even just looking at me, you go like, fuck, you got shit, aren't you? Goes,
he would be like the perfect person to have that swagger. I mean, he looks like he could literally murder every other player like in a fist fight.
He's a Viking, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know.
Dude, if you actually saw those two people in real life, Caps and Broxah, both from Denmark, by the way. If I said to you, right, speculate which one of them is this player, you would think Broxah was fucking Caps' play style, and Caps is the other one who's just like a specky little nerd, like, all right, mate, can I get in on this? Like, I won't make the obvious joke there, you know. Whatever. And sometimes they're better left unsaid. Sometimes they're better that way.
God.
Oh man.
I can't lie, I did set that up on purpose. So whatever.
Okay.
No, to go back though, like. What were we actually talking about before that? Self-made.
Well, we were talking about the tweet in general. Like,
oh, the tweet. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just gave my take on it, but I feel like just to close out the episode, the last thing we should do is just predictions. Like, who do you guys think? I'll go first because I guess I'm just talking right now. But I'm gonna go ahead and say I still think G2 is gonna win the split. Like, maybe I'm just a G2 fanboy, maybe I'm G2 biased, but I just believe that when push comes to shove, this is like the champions of EU. These are like, I don't know what fucking narrative ride goes. It's like the new kings versus the old king, whatever the fuck it is. They're the new kings.
Exactly. You nailed it there.
Yeah, it's new kings versus the old kings. They're the new kings.
The secret was you only gave it 5 seconds thought, just like their content team does.
Okay, respect. Well,
He's got no filter today.
Man. You realize I'm trying to get unbanned by Ryan. Okay.
I'm not sure doing shows with me is the path to getting unbanned.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but you know what? Fuck it. I mean, we started here. Yeah, you know what? Even if I don't get unbanned, the viewership's pretty good either way. So I think I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing.
It's like Jensen and Broxah. It's like, are you doing anything? Don't know, but whatever. We're winning, so fuck it. Keep doing it, I guess.
Exactly, man. So my vote's gonna be G2 winning the split. Who do you think is gonna win, Caedrel? If you had to guess.
It's so hard not to say G2, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't know. I guess G2 will win, yeah. But it's so hard not to say G2. If I wasn't going to say G2, I'd say Rogue, but I guess G2. I think whoever wins the lower bracket final is going to win.
Damn.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
Because, like, if Rogue wins that, they just got 3-0 slapped by the team that they're going to end up in finals versus, like...
No, I can see where he's coming from, though, because, like, let's face it, like, the way they played against Fnatic, there's surely no way they're going to play the same series again. Like, looks like they've learned their lesson. So if they can beat G2, logically, they must be fucking good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say the winner of that final, but I guess G2 probably, yeah.
I'll
take G2 as well.
All right,
but the thing is, my main reason is this. Like, first of all, I will just throw in there, one of the reasons I love that series, G2 versus Fnatic, even though I obviously hated it because I hate Fnatic, but the reason I loved it because it was self-made smurf.
You just hate Fnatic?
Obviously, I don't give a fuck, mate. What are they going to do? There's no jurisdiction in real life, mate. It's not illegal to hate Fnatic. Like, Riot can't ban me. What are they going to do? Ban me off YouTube? Suck my dick. There you go, Matt Merrill. I probably shouldn't say if you're trying to get banned, though, to be fair. Like, whatever, I wasn't listening to that bit.
Hey, I didn't say, you know, I am responsible for my own
Yeah.
opinions only.
That's true. But no, the point I was going to make was, like, first of all, the reason I loved that is because, dude, I know what the Fnatic fans' opinion was, because obviously they used to spam tweet me on every match. I used to say when he was in SK that Selfmade looked like the best jungler, and they would always just go like, "No, he isn't. He's just a fucking guy who's just doing good because his team's shit and he's selfish." And then I would obviously say Broxah, it's mad overrated, and they go, "No, he isn't. He's really good." And then of course Broxah leaves, Selfmade joins, and smurfs the whole series and they beat G2. So it's like, you know what? Go back in time 1 year and suck my dick. There you go. you lose. You lose no matter what Fnatic fan. I mean, you always lose because you're a Fnatic fan and you probably dressed in a fucking tutu when you're 14 years old and you're a boy. So you probably lost anyway. Aside from that. And you're into anime. Well, it's actually, there's nothing wrong with being into anime. It's just if it's your life, basically. If it's your identity, that's a problem. You just watch it and go, a children's Japanese cartoon show. That was enjoyable. That's fine. If you start learning the Japanese words and like going fucking like talking about like things in their culture, there's probably something wrong with your mind, or you just didn't get enough as a kid. I'm not trying to figure it out. That's for Nemesis to go on Ellis's couch and just passive aggressively talk about his life. They'll figure that out for themselves.
Okay.
What I was going to say was this. This is the reason why G2 wins this series. And it's actually such a simple analysis. Dude, they basically won the other series. Like, everyone's acting like Fnatic stomped them or something. They basically had that series almost in the bag. Like, bear in mind, they won 2 games. They had a 3rd game that was won. So it's not like they have to do anything crazy. And I actually think this is the downside, unfortunately, of double elim for Fnatic. Fnatic showed their hand. Remember, if that was single elim, Fnatic wins the split. And I would even have to say, fair play, you won the split. But they basically showed their hand with the draft. So unless they've got some other crazy shit up their sleeve, and I have to say, even though Nemesis was good in the games he won, he's playing like 2 champions, mate. So I'm really interested in this draft. Like, I think if G2 drafts well, I think they just win. I'm not hating on that scenario. Like, by the way, if Fnatic finishes 2nd in LEC, that's still pretty fucking good, especially from where they were. Remember, XL was supposed to be in the fucking playoffs rather than Fnatic, but
There you
sadly,
go.
Gilius had to have like fucking 10 good games in his entire life. And then when he got in the playoffs, like obviously after SK, Gilius was like, oh, sure hope I play well today. Fucking Grim Reaper's just behind the door, like, come on, Gilius, the deal was only for 10 games, man. Like, he just had to fucking peace out, didn't he? That was probably listen, I'll admit, probably the most toxic tweet I did was when Schalke lost the first game. I did do a tweet where, because I was so sick of people spamming that fucking SO4 miracle run, I put like SO4 losers run is at 0-1 now, guys.
What? Jesus Christ.
I just don't give a fuck.
All right.
Whatever.
All right, so I mean, there it is. That like Thorin said, that's the end of the show.
On that.
I mean, if it goes any longer, I'm getting fucking banned. Like, let's be real. So,
I think so too. It's a complete permaban soon.
it's actually just a complete permaban. If this show goes any longer, 1 minute longer, it's over. So I just want to say thank you for everyone being here in the chat that watched the show and enjoyed it. Caedrel is going to be streaming after this. I'm going to be hosting him. And yeah, thank you for coming on, Caedrel, as well. I think it was a really enjoyable episode. I mean, if it doesn't, like, look, it's most likely will get me banned, but at least it'll be some content. So I'd say that's a worth.
Every time I'm on a show with Thorin, my cheeks hurt and I get flamed for not being in playoffs. It's every single time.
Sounds like a win-win to me. Right? So you know.
Thought you'd be used to getting your cheeks clapped.
I'm so done. I'm so done. Guys, I gotta go. Look at the time. I gotta go. Yeah, see you guys.
End of the show. That's it. Thank you guys for coming. We are done. Bye, guys.